Tonight, we're going to spend the next few hours living the quiet, ordinary life of someone history rarely remembers. There are no kings, no famous battles, no great discoveries, just another day in the Middle Ages. Tonight, you walk through a quiet day with a medieval blacksmith, not the heroic version, the real one, the tired one, the smoky one, the one made of charcoal dust, sore shoulders, and small necessary things. If quiet nights like this help you rest, you are welcome to stay with the channel. Now let the room grow a little softer, let your breathing slow, and settle in beside the low red light of a village forge, where the day begins long before the sun feels warm. You wake before the sky has fully decided to become morning. The house is still dark. The air is cool in the way only an hour before dawn can be cool, even in a season that later turns warm. Smoke from yesterday has settled into the boards, into your sleeves, into the blanket, into the straw underfoot. The smell never quite leaves. It follows the work home because the work is home, or near enough. The forge is not some distant building visited for a few appointed hours. It sits close to the rest of life. The noise of iron and the noise of eating and the noise of sleeping all live almost wall to wall. You dress for dirt rather than comfort. Wool and linen, plain and practical. Nothing here stays clean for long. Soot finds every seam. Ash settles in the cuffs. Your hands are rough before the day even starts. The skin along the fingers is thick from old heat, old handles, old weight. There is no grand beginning, no noble speech. Just the first standing up, the first stretch of an aching back, the first breath that already carries charcoal. Outside, the village or little town is not yet busy, but it is not silent either. Somewhere a dog moves, somewhere a shutter shifts, somewhere a cartwheel complains in the dark because someone else in some other necessary trade is also waking early. Time is still kept more by habit than by any clock you can consult at a glance. If there is a bell, it will matter. If there is no bell close by, dawn itself is enough. The day begins when the light begins, and often a little before. You step into the workshop and meet the shape of yesterday. The forge is compact, hearth, bellows, anvil on its block, tongs on pegs, chisels, punches, a hammer or two where they were left in the better moment between fatigue and sleep. A tub of water stands nearby, dark and still for now. The floor is never truly clean. Scale, ash, little curls of wasted iron, charcoal crumbs, dust. Even the scraps are not really waste. Iron costs too much to throw away. Small pieces become nails. Bent bits become rivets. Offcuts wait for the day when someone needs a bracket, a patch, a hook, something modest and urgent. The fire from last night may have been banked under ash if fuel was worth saving, which it always is. You crouch and stir through the grey cover, looking for hidden life. Sometimes there is a little red left underneath, enough to coax back into work. Sometimes there is not, and the morning begins more slowly. Either way, charcoal must be arranged with care. Charcoal is the usual fuel because it gives a concentrated heat that iron understands. Wood alone is too blunt, too smoky, too unruly for finer control. You need a steady, hot center. You need a place where iron can move from dark to red to the brighter shades that tell your eye it is ready. The bellows wait beside the hearth like a second pair of lungs. Leather, wood, effort. In some shops, a helper works them for long stretches. In others, the rhythm changes with the task. However it is done, air must be fed into the fire with judgment. Too little, and the heat sulks. Too much in the wrong moment, and fuel vanishes faster than you can afford. So the first labor of the day is not hammering at all. It is tending, it is arranging, It is waking the forge as carefully as you woke yourself. Soon there is a small orange pulse where there was only ash. Then a brighter pocket. Then the familiar breathing of the fire as air begins to move through it. The workshop changes with that first proper glow. Shapes return. The anvil edge gleams faintly. The wall pegs throw thin shadows. Smoke rises and looks for every crack in the roof before deciding how much of itself to leave behind. Your eyes water a little, not from drama, only from routine. There may be an apprentice or younger helper in the household, or not. In many places, boys learn this trade first through repetitive work. Carrying fuel, pumping bellows, fetching water, watching colour in hot iron until colour begins to mean something. If someone helps here, the first tasks are humble ones. Fill the slack tub if it has dropped too low. Bring more charcoal from the store. Sort yesterday's pieces into what is promised, what is unfinished, and what can be cut down for smaller jobs. If no one helps, then all these motions remain yours. The day is heavy either way. You look over the iron stock. Most likely these bars did not begin here as ore pulled from earth and smelted on site. Ordinary smiths are often secondary workers shaping iron that has already been made elsewhere into useful things. Wrought iron is the common material, not cast iron for most daily goods. This iron is low in carbon, fibrous, workable, more willing under hammer and heat. It arrives valuable and stays valuable. Every length must justify itself. There are unfinished pieces from yesterday. Perhaps nails started in a quieter hour. A strap hinge not yet punched. A cracked tool waiting to be reheated and scarfed for repair instead of discarded. Repair matters as much as making, maybe more. Few people want to waste good iron if it can be joined, upset, bent back, or welded hot. A smith's worth is not only in making new objects, it is in letting old objects continue. Before customers begin to appear, the early work is often small work, repetitive work, work that suits a forge still finding its full temperature. You set aside a handful of narrow offcuts for nails or staples. There is comfort in such pieces. They ask little in return for attention. Heat, hammer, turn, strike, cut, repeat. The body remembers even if the mind remains half in sleep. This is one reason apprentices begin there. The trade is learned in rhythm before it is learned in theory. Now the bellows breathe more steadily. The first bar goes into the heart of the charcoal. You wait. Waiting is part of the craft. Iron has its own pace. You cannot command it cold. You cannot rush it without waste. So you watch the color gather slowly along the metal, dim red first, then stronger. Around you, the morning continues to arrive in careful stages. A line of paler light shows at the doorway. Somewhere beyond the shop, the rest of the settlement begins to stir. But here, before voices and bargaining and requests, the day is still mostly made of heat and patience. And that is enough for now. By the time the light outside turns from grey to a thin, washed silver, the forge has found its working mood. The fire no longer needs coaxing every moment. It holds, it breathes, it answers the bellows. This is when the first true labour begins. You start with the plain things that keep a shop alive. Nails, rivets, hooks, staples, small pieces that vanish into doors, chests, carts, fences, shutters, harness, and roof timbers. Hardly anyone praises a nail, yet villagers lean on them quietly. The same is true of many things you make. They are noticed mostly when absent. A loose hinge matters when a gate will not hang. A broken staple matters when something will not stay shut. A worn hook matters when a pot has nowhere to rest over the fire. So much of the trade lies in preventing small inconveniences from becoming larger ones. The bar comes out hot, tongs grip, hammer lifts. Then the familiar ringing begins. Not wild noise, not endless fury. a practiced sequence. Strike near the end, turn the iron, strike again, narrow it, flatten it, cut it. Back to the fire, then out again. Rhythm saves strength. A good smith does not simply hit hard. A good smith places the blow where it matters and lets repetition do the rest. The arms learn this over years. So do the feet. So does the back, though the back complains anyway. Scale breaks away with each round of hammering and scatters over the floor in black flakes. The smell of hot iron is dry and a little sharp. The smell of charcoal is fuller, earthier, almost sweet under the smoke. When a piece goes into the slack tub, there is the quick hiss, the little cloud of steam, the damp breath that settles against your face. These sounds form the language of the morning. Bellows, ringing iron, scrape, hiss. A wooden handle set down on the bench. A breath, another breath. Then the next piece. If a helper is present, the work divides itself in the old, ordinary ways. One pair of hands keeps the fire fed. One pair passes tools. One pair watches the color in the metal and learns that dull red is not the same as brighter orange, and that each task has its proper heat. The teaching is rarely formal in the gentle modern sense. It comes through doing the same motions again and again, through correction, through being close enough to notice why one blow worked and another did not. Apprenticeship begins in service and repetition. Only slowly does it become skill. Outside, more people are awake now. The road or lane beyond the shop begins to move. A cart somewhere, a voice, a chicken complaining over nothing. The smell of damp ground lifts as the morning opens. Customers do not usually arrive in a grand line all at once. They come one by one, carrying need in their hands. A bent hinge, a dull hoe, a loose strap fitting, a broken ring from harness gear. Sometimes they come with a clear request. Sometimes they come with a problem and trust you to name the fix. Your social place is modest but solid. You are not a lord, not a clerk, not a priest. But iron keeps everyone from complete helplessness, and few people forget that. A smith often stands somewhere in the middle ranks of working life, respected because the tools are scarce, the skill is slow to learn, and the work cannot simply be improvised by anyone with spare time. At the same time, respect does not make fuel cheaper or shoulders fresher. Necessity gives status of a plain kind. It does not remove the labor. The first customer this morning might be a farmer with a tool that should have been repaired yesterday if weather and money had been kinder. Agricultural life shapes your trade more than any grand political event ever will. When fields need opening, plough irons matter. When hay must be cut, edges matter. When harvest approaches, every delay feels larger. The smith's calendar bends around the farming year because so many of the repair jobs belong to it. A worn hoe blade lies on the bench. You test it with your hand, not to admire it, but to understand its fatigue. Metal thins where earth has eaten at it. The edge has spread and gone soft with use. Maybe it can be drawn back into shape. Maybe it needs a patch. Maybe the customer hopes for a miracle when what iron offers is only a smaller rescue. Repair is often negotiation with material. You give the iron enough heat to move, enough force to hold, and enough honesty to know when a thing is near the end of its useful life. Another customer may ask about horseshoes, though the exact line between smith and farrier changes from place to place. In one setting, the same hands do both. In another, shoeing belongs more clearly to a specialist. In a smaller settlement, one practical craftsperson may cover many needs simply because there are not enough people for narrower roles. So, a village smith might turn from nails to hinges to hoof iron in the same morning, not because variety is exciting, but because daily life requires it. The year is 1348, though the iron in your hands does not care what year it is. Still, people do. News moves unevenly, often by rumor, by traveler, by anxious repetition. There are whispers of sickness in some places, delays in others, missing carriers, fewer strangers on the road than usual, or perhaps only fewer than expected. It would be false to say every forge in every town feels the same shadow in the same week. The effects vary by place, but uncertainty has entered the air along with the smoke. A load of charcoal may come late. Iron stock may be harder to replace. A customer may fail to appear for reasons no one wants to name too clearly. Even ordinary work can feel slightly thinned around the edges. Yet the morning goes on in the old way because most mornings do. The hammer rises, the hammer falls. A strip of iron becomes several nails. A bent bracket becomes useful again. A small order is promised for later. Another is set beside the anvil. Payment may come in coin, or in part now and part after harvest, or in some local arrangement everyone understands and no one writes down with much care. Credit and memory travel together in a small community. By now the workshop is warmer. Your sleeves cling a little at the forearm. Soot marks the side of your wrist. The first bread of the day is still somewhere ahead, but not yet. There is enough work in front of you to postpone hunger a while longer. The fire is finally steady. The lane outside is awake. The anvil has found its voice. And the morning, plain and repetitive and useful, settles fully around you. The first proper customers do not arrive all at once. They come in the loose, patient way that work usually finds a village smith. A man appears at the doorway with a hinge wrapped in cloth, as if the extra layer might keep the iron from seeming quite so broken. Another leaves a small bundle of bent nails and asks whether any can be straightened and used again. A woman from a nearby household pauses just outside the threshold, careful of the soot and the sparks, and asks when a hook for a cooking chain might be ready. None of it is grand. None of it is rare. But all of it matters because daily life hangs on small iron things. You listen more than you speak. That is part of the trade too. People do not only bring metal. They bring timing. They bring worry. They bring the little urgency of weather, animals, doors that do not close, carts that creak too much, tools that ought to have lasted longer. You look at the broken hinge first. One leaf is sound enough. The other has opened at the knuckle and twisted. New iron could solve it, so could careful repair. Iron is not cheap enough to waste when a repair may do. You set the hinge near the fire and let the customer wait while another simpler piece goes ahead of it. This is ordinary. The forge teaches order. Not every task belongs in the flames at once. A short bar becomes a row of staples first, because the heat is ready for that, and because several households always need staples. A few fast blows draw each piece narrower, then a turn over the horn of the anvil, then a bend, then another. The shapes repeat until your arm seems to remember them by itself. The sounds in the shop settle into a pattern that would be familiar in any working forge. Bellows breathing, charcoal shifting inward as it burns down, hammer on hot iron with a note that changes as the metal cools, tongs scraping against the anvil face, the short hiss when scale falls or when a tool is touched to water. It is not music exactly. It is more regular than that. A trade has its own kind of plain rhythm. Beside you, a younger helper works the bellows when you ask, and not always before you ask. Apprenticeship is built from this sort of watching and delay and correction. He learns that the fire is not simply made hotter and hotter. It must be fed and narrowed. The charcoal must sit where the heat can gather. Air must be given when the iron needs it and not wasted when it does not. A strong fire at the wrong moment is only wasted fuel. A weak fire at the right moment is only delay. You pick up the hinge again when the forge is ready for a larger piece. Wrought iron softens under colour rather than under noise. First you watch for the dull red deep in the metal, then brighter. Then the moment when it can be moved without crumbling at the edges. The damaged part is laid on the anvil and worked back toward use. A twist is corrected, a shoulder is flattened, a pinhole is opened clean again with a punch. If the break demands joining, you scarf the damaged ends and bring them back to heat, preparing for a small forge weld. Such repair needs practice more than strength. Hot surfaces must meet quickly. Hammer blows must be firm enough to join, not wild enough to scatter the heat into nothing. The customer watches as if watching grain become bread, slowly, with more trust than understanding. That too is ordinary. Most people know what a smith does in broad outline: fire, hammer, sparks. But the details stay in your hands. Where to strike, when to stop. When reheating will save the piece, and when reheating only burns away more iron into scale. The floor beneath the anvil keeps a dark dusting of that scale. Tiny black flakes. The cost of every mistake, and of every honest blow as well. Now and then someone comes not to buy, but to ask. Has the iron bar from a larger town arrived yet? Can a shoe be fitted before market day? Would you look at a cart band this afternoon? Questions come through the doorway almost as often as bodies. In 1348, there is another thing moving through all questions, though no one names it every time. News travels with peddlers, clergy, carriers, and kin. This village has heard of sickness elsewhere, perhaps in a port, perhaps in a town on a road people know by name, perhaps nearer than anyone likes to say. You hear it in the pauses, in mention of someone absent longer than expected, in charcoal not yet delivered, in a customer saying he will pay when his brother returns, if his brother returns soon. The day does not stop. Work still needs doing, but uncertainty sits lightly on the edge of ordinary speech. A bundle of old iron scraps waits in a basket by the wall. Nothing useful is thrown away easily. Short offcuts may become nails. Flattened remnants may patch some small weakness in a tool strap or bracket. Rivets can be cut from pieces too mean for larger work. You sort some of them with your foot while your hands stay busy. The shop accumulates these leftovers slowly, like crumbs in a bread chest. They look poor. They are not poor. They are stored possibility. Another customer brings a hoe with a loosened iron fitting. Another asks for hooks. Another only wants to know if a knife can be mended, though such work may belong more properly to another specialist in a larger place. In a village, trades blur at the edges. If there is iron and if there are hands to shape it, people will ask. You cannot do every task equally well, but you are expected to try many of them. By late morning, several finished pieces rest on the bench in a patient row. Staples, a repaired hinge, a pair of hooks, a handful of nails sorted into those fit for use and those fit only for remaking. The bench itself bears little burns and old cuts from years of the same motions. Sunlight, thin and dusty, reaches farther into the workshop now, though it still cannot soften the blackened rafters overhead. Outside, the lane is fully awake. Inside, the work remains close, hot, repetitive, and useful. One task leaves your hands, another takes its place, and the day goes on without hurry. At some point, hunger becomes harder to put aside. It does not arrive dramatically. It simply grows until even the warmth of the forge cannot distract from it. Your shoulders have been working since first light. Your hands smell of iron and charcoal. There is soot at the edge of your cuff and a fine grit in the lines of your skin. By now, the body asks for something plain. Midday does not mean silence in the shop. It only means a slowing. The fire is banked rather than abandoned. Fresh fuel is not heaped on carelessly. You pull some of the hotter charcoal inward, leave the rest to settle, and let the heart of the forge keep itself alive in a smaller glow. A dead fire costs time. A living one costs fuel. So, as in most things here, you aim for the middle path. Food comes close to the work because work rarely moves far from the food. In a household joined to a workshop, the boundary is thin. A loaf or heel of bread appears. Pottage, if there is pottage today, may be thick enough to count for a meal and thin enough to remind you that grain must stretch. There may be onions. There may be cheese. Ale is safer than doubtful water in many places and common at table, though not every cup is strong. The meal is not large. It is not meant to be. It is meant to carry the afternoon. You sit, if only for a little, on a bench, worn smooth by habit. The change from standing is its own kind of relief. Muscles continue their small complaints once they are asked to rest. Forearms pulse dully. Fingers feel heavier after tools are set down. The ringing in the ears does not stop at once. The anvil seems to continue somewhere in the head, faintly, from memory and repetition. Around you the workshop looks different when no one is striking metal. Without the hammer, other sounds become clearer. A coal gives way with a soft, inward crackle. Water in the slack tub settles after the morning's use. Somewhere outside, a cartwheel rolls over uneven ground. Voices pass the lane. A dog barks and then thinks better of it. Farther off, if the wind carries it, a bell marks the hour in the old, broad way. Time is marked here, not by numbers on a face, by familiar moments, by prayer, by light, by hunger, by the length of a shadow near the doorway. Meals are also times for reckoning, not formal reckoning with neat accounts, though there may be a tally in charcoal on wood, or marks remembered better than written. You look at what has come in so far and what is promised. A little coin. A promise after market, another after harvest. Perhaps some payment in food or fuel later on. Such arrangements are ordinary enough. In a small place, trust and necessity are always bargaining with one another. If you refuse every customer who cannot pay at once, you lose work and goodwill. If you trust too freely, the household feels it before winter is over. The year 1348 makes these thoughts less steady than usual. This is not because every road is empty or every house grieving all at once. Ordinary life often continues unevenly, even under a shadow. But news of sickness elsewhere can make every promise feel softer around the edges. Will the charcoal burner deliver next month? Will the carrier come from town with bar iron? Will the man who ordered plough repairs still have means to settle his debt after harvest, if harvest itself is short of hands? You cannot answer any of this over bread. Still, the questions sit there with the meal. If there is family in or near the shop, their work folds into this pause as quietly as the food does. Someone has brought the bread. Someone has kept track of what is nearly gone in the household chest. Someone notices that the onion store is low, or that the ale barrel will not last as long as hoped. Records often leave such labor in the background. Daily life does not. A working forge depends on more than the person who swings the hammer. It depends on fuel carried, meals prepared, accounts remembered, clothes mended, scraps sorted, and customers answered when the iron is too hot to leave. The helper eats too, though not always at the same ease. Apprenticeship can mean hunger arriving faster than privilege does. He has worked the bellows, fetched water, moved stock, and watched your hands for clues he cannot yet name. The lessons of the morning sit inside him beside the bread. Heat color, timing. How long a bar can stay in the fire before waste begins. Why one customer waits and another goes first. These are not grand teachings. They are a trade entering the body by repetition. You do not linger long. Few craftspeople with daylight to spend can afford a luxurious middle of the day. The bench is comfortable only because it is temporary. The forge draws your eye even while you chew. A smith judges time partly by fuel. Charcoal eaten by a fire is money becoming ash. Daylight crossing the floor is another measure. Too much sitting means work backed into evening, and evening work by weak light is slower, riskier, and more tiring. So you finish what there is. Crumbs are brushed away. A cup is emptied. Hands are wiped as well as they can be, though the black in the skin never leaves entirely. You stand again with the small reluctance that follows any brief rest. The body had only just begun to believe in stopping. Now it must be persuaded otherwise. At the forge, you wake the fire from its quieter state. The bellows breathe again. A buried red brightens. Then another. Heat gathers where it is needed and nowhere else. On the bench, the waiting pieces look much as they did before the meal, but your eyes return to them differently. Afternoon work is usually heavier. More repairs, larger fittings, more customers in a hurry because the day has grown shorter than their needs. You take up the tongs. The first iron of the next stretch goes back into the coals. Lunch is over, though not sharply. It fades like everything else in this day, from one useful thing into another. The iron in the coals is meant for a cart fitting, something plain and necessary, the sort of thing that keeps a wheel where it belongs, and a load moving over bad ground. It should be simple. Heat, lift, hammer, turn, punch, fit. Many parts of this life are built from that kind of order. But afternoon is often when small troubles begin to gather. You draw the bar out with the tongs and set it across the anvil. The first blows go well enough. Scale breaks away in black flakes. The metal spreads where you ask it to spread. The ringing sound is steady. Then, as you turn the piece to work the other side, you see a fault in it. Not a grand break. Not the sort of disaster that stops the whole day. Just a stubborn weakness in the iron, a place where the bar is less clean than it looked at first. A line, a roughness, a hint that the bloom from which it came was never perfect. That is not unusual. Medieval iron is rarely perfect. Wrought iron carries its history inside it. Slag remains trapped in long threads. One part draws smoothly under the hammer. Another part resists, then opens a little at the edge. You lean closer, not too close, and tip the piece toward the light coming through the doorway. The floor is real, small but real. So the work slows. It does not stop. It simply becomes more careful. You return the piece to the forge and feed the fire with another measured armful of charcoal. Fuel is never treated lightly. Charcoal disappears fast when the work is heavy. A forge can eat a day's supply if you let it. The black pieces settle around the iron. The bellows breathe. Heat gathers again, and the workshop gives back the same smells it always does. Dry charcoal, hot scale. Damp wood near the tub. Old smoke caught in the rafters. While the iron comes back to heat, another problem stands quietly beside the first. The charcoal basket is lower than you would like. Not empty, not urgent yet, but low enough to be noticed. Deliveries do not always come exactly when promised. Roads are roads. Rain is rain. Carters have their own delays. In a year like 1348, even ordinary trade can feel uncertain in ways no one can fully measure while living through them. Someone is ill. Someone does not arrive. Someone keeps to home longer than expected. A load of fuel may come late for reasons no one bothers to explain. You do not stand still and wonder at it for long. You just count what remains and work a little more sparingly. The piece comes up to a brighter color. You set it back on the anvil and strike around the weak place with shorter blows now, guiding rather than forcing. The hammer does not solve everything by strength. Much of the trade depends on knowing when to push and when to leave the iron alone. Too hard and a small fault becomes a split. Too cold and the metal answers badly. Too much haste and the customer receives something that will fail on the road and return to shame you. So you take another heat, then another. The rhythm changes from broad shaping to correction. Hammer, turn, look. Hammer again. A punch is set in place. A drift widens the opening where a fastening will pass. The edges are dressed. The iron is persuaded into usefulness, if not elegance. Most customers are not paying for elegance. They want a piece that will hold. Near your feet lies a scatter of old scraps, saved for days exactly like this. Offcuts, bent fragments, a broken strap from some earlier repair. Nothing is thrown away if it might become a nail, a rivet, a patch, or a brace. Iron costs too much to waste. When new stock disappoints you, old stock begins to look more attractive. You sort through the pieces with the toe of your shoe and then with your hand, lifting one strip, then another, weighing them by habit more than thought. A second customer appears at the doorway while the first fitting reheats. He does not come in far. Few people hurry toward a live forge unless they must. He holds a hoe with its socket loose and its edge worn dull from fieldwork. He asks if it can be seen to before evening. You glance at the tool. Yes, likely, but not at once. His face tells you he hoped for quicker news. This is another ordinary problem. Not the tool itself, the timing. Everyone's need feels immediate once the sun has passed midday. The field cannot wait. The cart cannot wait. The gate hinge cannot wait. But your hands can hold only one hot piece safely at a time. You tell him, in the plain way such things are told, that he may leave it and come back later, or wait if he chooses. Waiting is part of village and town life. Waiting at the smithy, more than most places. He leaves the hoe. Payment is not settled with much ceremony. Perhaps coin later, perhaps a promise, perhaps part now and part after harvest, depending on custom and on how well you know the household. Exact arrangements varied from place to place, and no single pattern fits every forge. What remains the same is the small uncertainty carried by nearly every exchange. A smith's work is needed. That does not mean it is always promptly paid. The cart fitting is ready for joining. You scarf the edges that must meet. The surfaces are heated carefully, brought near the point where they may be worked together. Forge welding is not done by magic, though from a little distance it can seem close to it. It is timing, clean faces, fast blows, and enough heat in the right place. You move quickly now because the moment asks it, though even this quickness is practiced rather than frantic. The hammer lands, the seam closes, not perfectly at first. Again. The joined section begins to hold. A small hiss rises from the slack tub when you cool the edge of a tool. Steam lifts and vanishes. Wetness settles briefly over the smell of ash. The workshop floor, already littered with scale, takes another scatter of black flakes. Your shoulder reminds you that afternoon has been long, though the light says there is still some work left in it. Then comes one more annoyance, quieter than the others. Smoke, which had been rising tolerably enough, shifts with the air and pushes lower into the room. Your eyes prickle. The doorway no longer draws as cleanly. Some days the forge breathes well. Some days it sulks. You adjust the fuel. You shift your stance. The apprentice, if there is one in this shop on this day, may be sent to check a shutter, a gap, a simple change in airflow. Even with help, there is no grand solution. Timber buildings, weather, and fire each have their own temper. At last the cart fitting is set aside to cool slowly. It is not beautiful. It does not need to be. It is sound enough, which matters more. The hoe waits next. The charcoal basket is still lower than you want. The smoke still hangs a little. The customer may pay late. The iron may surprise you again. None of this is unusual. Problems do not arrive like thunder in this life. More often they collect like soot, a little at a time, dark, dull, constant. And so you take up the hoe. You test the loosened socket. You look at the worn edge. You place it near the fire, not with dread, only with the quiet acceptance that the day was never going to smooth itself for you. The bellows breathe once more. The coals brighten. Another plain difficulty moves into your hands. And the afternoon goes on. By this point in the day, the season is in everything. Even when no one names it aloud, a forge is always its own small weather. Fire before your face, sweat under the sleeves, dry heat against the shins. Yet the wider season still reaches in. It changes the customers. It changes the roads. It changes what breaks, what wears thin, and what people can afford to mend. If it is winter, the difference begins before dawn and lingers after dark. The light is brief. The mud outside the threshold may stiffen in the morning and soften by noon. Carts come later, if they come at all. A horse breathes steam at the door. A man enters the workshop with cold trapped in his cloak and brings it with him for a few moments before the forge drives it back. Your fingers know the chill whenever you step away from the fire. The slack tub feels sharper. The iron on the bench bites colder through the skin before it has seen the coals. Winter changes the work itself. There may be fewer field tools in urgent need than in spring, when ploughs and harrows call for attention, or in harvest, when sickles and scythes must not fail. Instead, more of the day can belong to repairs put off until the farming rush has passed. Hinges for doors that drag in swollen frames, latches, hooks, pot hooks, small household fittings. Cart parts mended not because the journey is immediate, but because this is the season when a man finally has a little time to bring them. And yet, winter also makes every supply uncertain. Charcoal must come somehow. Bar iron must come somehow. If roads are deep in mud, or if frost makes wheels complain, a delivery that looks easy on paper becomes slow in life. Most ordinary smiths are not smelting their own iron from ore. They depend on stock made elsewhere, then brought by road, river, or cart in ways that are never as smooth as they sound when written down later. A delay in transport can shrink your choices. You make more from scrap. You repair rather than replace. You watch every usable offcut more carefully. In spring, the whole pattern changes again. The village seems to wake in the same way the forge wakes. Suddenly, there are hoes with loose heads, harrow teeth bent out of line, plough fittings worn from the first hard work in reopened ground, shoes for animals that have stood through winter and are now asked to pull again. Spring work carries a different mood at the doorway, not exactly panic, but pressure. The season itself leans on people, and then people lean on you. Summer brings its own kind of weariness. The workshop can feel airless then, the forge heat folding into the natural heat of the day until there seems to be no cool corner anywhere. Flies drift in. Sweat marks the linen beneath your outer clothes. The iron is no hotter than in winter, but your body feels each heat more personally. Water matters more. Rest matters more, though rest does not always appear. If harvest is near, knives, sickles, and scythes may come in needing edges renewed or sockets tightened. Customers grow impatient because weather, grain, and daylight do not pause for careful craftsmanship. They want the tool back in the hand by evening, Autumn has another rhythm again. Roads can be busy with carts, wheels strain under loads, fittings loosen, nails work themselves free. Iron tires and other cart hardware may need attention after rough miles. There is also the quiet matter of settling accounts. After harvest, some households finally have means to pay what was promised months before. Not every debt turns into coin. Some may become grain, ale, fuel, or another kind of exchange depending on local habit and the relationship between households. The exact balance of coin, kind, and credit is not the same everywhere, but the season often decides when promises become something more solid. Even inside one single day, these yearly turns are present in what arrives at your bench. A hoe tells you one thing, a hinge another. A shoe taken from a horse tells another. The smithy is a place where the calendar comes in, wearing iron. In 1348, there is another season laid over all the others, harder to name and harder to measure. News moves unevenly. Rumor moves faster. In some places, the sickness has already changed the sound of daily life. In others, it is more shadow than fact, something spoken of at the edge of work. You do not spend the whole day staring into that shadow. Few working people have that luxury. Bread still needs earning, iron still needs heating. But absence can be felt without speeches about it. A customer does not come when expected. A carrier is delayed longer than usual. A household asks for work on credit and speaks more quietly than before. Exact effects vary sharply from place to place, and any one day can only be imagined in broad outlines. Still, uncertainty has weight. It sits in the room even when no one points at it. The season also shapes the length of your labor. In bright months, work may stretch farther simply because light allows it. In darker months, evening comes early and asks the day to narrow. Yes, there is firelight. Yes, an urgent job can be finished after dusk. But fine judgment is better by day, and fuel is not free. Most work bends one way or another around the sun and around the bells that remind the town or village what hour it has become. Your own body keeps the season too. In winter, the first touch of hot air from the forge can feel like mercy. In summer, the same heat feels like another burden added to the shoulders. In damp weather, old aches stay longer in the wrist and elbow. In dry weather, dust and scale seem to live in the throat. The trade is the same trade all year, but it is never exactly the same day. Now, as the afternoon leans onward, you feel this without needing to sort it into neat thoughts. The work on the anvil belongs to the hour. The kind of work belongs to the season. The pace of customers belongs to the season. The state of the charcoal basket belongs to the season. Even the smell at the doorway changes with the month. Wet wool and mud in colder times. Warm animal hide and dust in hotter ones. Rain on earth, frost on timber. Dry straw from a cart bed. Each of them arrives, pauses, and leaves behind a little trace. You turn the hoe in your hands and set its socket toward the fire. It may need tightening, perhaps a little reforging where the metal has opened. The edge can be dressed after. This is not remarkable work. It is seasonal work. Soil has spoken to the tool, and now the tool comes to you for correction. Outside, the light has begun to soften, though not yet fail. The lane is quieter than at midday. A breeze or a drift of colder air touches the workshop entrance and disappears in the forge heat. You breathe smoke, charcoal, dampness, and iron, the usual air of the place. Then you lift the hoe with the tongs, bring it to the anvil, and begin again with the calm, repeated blows that fit one season to the next. The hammering slows, though it does not stop all at once. Late afternoon has a way of bringing other kinds of work to the bench. Not work of fire and iron only, but work of counting. work of remembering, work of wondering who has paid, who has promised, and who will promise again when the grain is cut, or when a cart reaches market, or when God is willing and the household has a little more to spare. You set the repaired hoe aside with the others, waiting for collection. Its metal is darker now, no longer bright from the fire. A line of tools and fittings rests near the wall. A hinge, 2 staples, a handful of nails bundled for a customer who wants them cheap and strong, which is what nearly every customer wants. Beside them sits work that is not yet settled. Settled in iron, perhaps. Not settled in coin. A blacksmith does not live by ringing blows alone. Iron costs money. Charcoal costs money. Bar stock brought from elsewhere costs money before it becomes anything useful in your hands. Even a small shop has mouths to feed, rent or dues to answer, and the ordinary leak of expenses that seems to drip from every day. Leather wears out, a hammer haft loosens, bellows need mending. Wood for the handle of a tool does not walk in by itself. So now, as the light tilts lower outside the doorway, you do what many craftsmen must do. You keep account as best you can, perhaps not in a grand ledger such as a rich merchant might keep, perhaps only by tally marks, memory, scraps, witnesses, and habit. The exact manner changes from place to place. In some towns there are firmer ways of recording. In some villages, memory and reputation do more of the work. But everywhere, a day's labor must somehow become tomorrow's food. You think of who paid in coin. Not many. A few small pieces worn thin by other hands before they reached yours. Enough to feel real in the palm, not enough to feel secure. Another customer has brought a hen some weeks before. Another settled a repair with ale and a measure of barley. Another still has only given his word that after harvest, when the fields have spoken kindly, he will return and square the account. This mix of coin, goods, and delay is not unusual. It is only tiring. There may be tolls to think of if iron or charcoal has come through a market road. There may be borough dues, or manorial demands, or the kind of local payment that seems small when named aloud, and larger when added together. Medieval taxes are rarely a single heavy knock at the door in a neat moment. More often they are scattered obligations, lay subsidies in some years, fees for trading, charges tied to place and custom. The exact burden on one smith in 1348 depends very much on whether you are in a town, under a lord, within a borough, or working in a smaller settlement with looser habits. The details shift. The pressure does not. If your workshop stands in a town with craft rules, there is also the weight of regulation. Not always taxes exactly, but close enough in feeling when they shape what you may sell, where you may work, and how openly you may compete. A guild where one exists can guard standards, training, and fair dealing. It can also mean dues, expectations, and eyes upon your work. Fire matters too. A forge in a timber-built street is useful, but it is also feared a little. Someone always notices smoke. Someone always notices sparks. You glance at the charcoal basket and measure what remains. Fuel is part of every calculation. A forge eats steadily. Not greedily, if managed well, but steadily. A long repair, several reheats, a poor weld, damp fuel, an idle apprentice at the bellows, all of these can turn profit thin before sunset. Charcoal does not become cheaper because a customer winces at the price of nails. And 1348 gives every small sum a sharper edge. News travels unevenly, but absence travels plainly. A carrier fails to arrive. A familiar customer has not been seen for days. A household that meant to collect an order leaves it waiting. In some places, the change is already heavy. In others, it is only a thinning at the edges of routine. It would be wrong to claim that every lane falls silent at once. It did not. But uncertainty hangs over trade like fine soot. It settles on all things. Even when the forge still burns, you cannot be sure who will come tomorrow, or what price iron may demand, or whether the man who owes you will be spared long enough to repay it. This is one of the dull truths of skilled work. Respect does not remove worry. A smith may be valued. People need hinges, hooks, hose, cart fittings, and repairs. They need shoes fitted for animals in some places, and nails by the dozen in nearly all places. They need iron made obedient again. But being needed is not the same as being comfortable. Your standing is middling. Better than some, far below others. Useful, known, and still subject to every hard season that passes through the village or street. You rub black dust from your fingers and leave only a darker smear. The bench holds no final answer. It only holds today's pieces and tomorrow's hopes tied up in metal. A customer may complain that a repair cost too much. Another may ask for haste, but not payment. Another may stand in the doorway with a broken fitting and the tired look of someone who hopes necessity will bargain on his behalf. Often it does. You make choices quietly. Which debts can wait? Which customers must be pressed gently? Which jobs to begin before payment because the work is urgent and the family known to you? Which jobs to refuse because charcoal is too dear to waste on promises alone? There is no clean line between trade and neighborliness. In a small place they live on the same bench. Outside, somewhere beyond the lane, a bell begins to mark the later part of the day. Not a clock in the modern sense. More a reminder that daylight is moving, prayer is nearing, and labor cannot stretch forever, even when need would like it to. You breathe in the smell of warm ash and old smoke, then you stack the finished pieces a little more neatly. You set aside the uncertain ones. You keep the day in order as best you can. That, too, is part of the trade. The fire burns lower while you count what cannot quite be counted. Coin, trust, custom, obligation. The forge has shaped iron since dawn. Now, the quieter work is shaping the evening. And after accounts, whether settled or not, there is still the church bell to hear, and the short walk of the spirit away from noise. When the bell carries more clearly through the cooling air, the forge no longer feels like the whole world. It is still warm behind you. It still smells of charcoal, wet ash, iron scale, and old wood. But the sound from outside reaches into that warmth and loosens your attention from the anvil. Vespers, perhaps, or simply the familiar evening marking of time as your community knows it. In the 14th century, for many people, hours are not owned by little machines on a wall. They are held by bells, by meals, by light, by habit, and by prayer. You do not leave in a rush. Nothing in this day has happened in a rush, and evening will not begin that way either. First, the work must be made safe enough to rest. The hottest iron is finished with, for now. Tongs go back to their place. A hammer is laid down head first against the block, rather than carelessly on the floor. The slack tub sits still with only a faint skin of warmth above the water, where earlier metal hissed and steamed. Loose scraps are gathered, offcuts matter. Iron is too valuable to scatter and forget. A small bent piece may become a rivet tomorrow. A stub may make a nail. Waste is only waste when it is too small, even for hope. You look once into the heart of the forge. The coals are not abandoned, they are managed. If there is reason to save the fire, it can be banked beneath ash so that morning labor begins more gently. If fuel is poor or the day has been long enough, the embers may be reduced further and relit fresh tomorrow. Exact practice varies. A single surviving diary does not guide us hour by hour here. What we know comes from craft evidence, practical necessity, and the long common sense of workshops. Fire is expensive, so is time. A smith learns to spare both where possible. Then you step outside, if only for a little way, and the evening feels wide after the close heat of the shop. The lane has changed since morning. It is softer now. Carts are fewer. Voices carry less. Smoke from other houses lifts into air already leaning toward night. Mud, dung, trampled straw, and the faint sweetness of distant cooking fires meet you instead of forge heat. Your clothes carry the workshop with them. Soot has settled into the cloth. The smell of iron and charcoal follows at your sleeves. Church is not always a matter of deep private feeling alone. It is habit, duty, community, rhythm, and the shape of the week. In medieval life, the church marks time as much as belief marks the soul. Baptisms, marriages, burials, feast days, fasts, saints' days, the pauses and patterns of ordinary prayer, all of it sits around daily labor like a frame around a plain picture. You work within it, whether your thoughts are devout, weary, distracted, or simply obedient. If you go in, the change is immediate. Stone, if your parish has stone, gives back a cooler breath than the forge. If the church is timber, it still feels different from the workshop. Dimmer in another way. The smell is wax, wool, damp, and many gathered bodies rather than smoke and metal. The sound is lower, not silent. Wooden benches creak, shoes scrape. Someone coughs, a child fidgets. The priest's words may be fully understood by some, only partly by others. Especially where Latin forms the service and daily speech lies elsewhere in the mind. Yet the shape of the act is known, even when every word is not. You stand, kneel, bow, or wait as custom asks. The body that all day has leaned into labor now leans into stillness. At first, that stillness can feel stranger than work. Your hands, so useful on hammer and tong, have little to do here. They fold, they rest. They ache without purpose. The shoulders feel the day more clearly once the hammering has stopped. A pulse remains in the palms, as if the anvil had lodged its ringing there. And 1348 brings a different shade to prayer, even if no one speaks it aloud in every breath. People are missing somewhere. People are worried somewhere. In some places, they are dying in numbers that make ordinary reckoning impossible. In other places, fear arrives ahead of the worst of it, by rumor, by travelers' talk, by sudden caution, by a household shuttered earlier than usual. It would be false to paint every service as open terror. Much of life continues by habit until habit can no longer carry it. But the year presses on the mind. Intercession matters in a world where causes are not always visible and safety is never guaranteed. You may pray for the dead, or for the sick, or for your household, or for the man who still owes payment on the cart fitting. Medieval prayer is not kept in separate drawers. Souls, weather, illness, harvest, debt, childbirth, and the safe return of a neighbor can live side by side within it. Practical life and spiritual life do not divide cleanly. They overlap the way smoke hangs in cloth after work. A blacksmith standing in the community can be felt here too. Not grandly. You are not noble because you shape iron, but people know your face. They know the sound of your yard. They know where to come when a hinge breaks or a tool fails at the wrong moment. In church, the miller, the carter, the widow, the field labourer, the child, the craftsman, all stand under the same roof, however unequal life may be outside it. For a short while, the day's bargains and irritations rest under something older and wider. Then the service eases toward its end, as evening always does. No revelation arrives. No dramatic peace settles over everything. More often, what comes is smaller. The mind becomes a little quieter. The day loosens. The shoulders drop by a finger's breadth. The world remains hard, but it is briefly ordered by familiar words. familiar gestures, familiar bells. When you step back toward the workshop and home, the light is lower still. The forge waits in partial darkness. The bench holds tomorrow in its scattered iron. The fire has been tamed to embers or near embers. Behind the practical noises of the day, the bell's note still seems to hang in the air for a moment longer. And so, evening goes on. From heat into coolness. From labor into prayer. From the ring of iron into the softer sounds of household life preparing to gather you in. When you step back from the lane and into the household side of the day, the heat changes again. It is no longer the hard, pointed heat of the forge. It is the softer warmth of a room that has held cooking, breath, and people. Smoke is here as well, but gentler. It clings to wood, cloth, and hair. It settles into everything and asks no permission. The workshop is never entirely separate from the home. That is one of the quiet truths of trades like yours. Ironwork fills the yard, the doorway, the bench, the corners. Soot travels. Ash travels. Small filings and black dust find their way in on shoes and hems. The work leaves marks even after the hammer has stopped. So evening with family is not a clean turning from one life to another. It is the same life, only slowed. A pot has been near the fire. Bread waits. Perhaps there is pottage thickened from what the household has managed to save and stretch. Perhaps onions. Perhaps cheese if there is some left. Ale, weak and ordinary, stands by in a cup or jug. Nothing on the board is made to impress. It is made to keep the body moving tomorrow. That is enough. You sit, or half sit, because the body has forgotten how to settle all at once. The shoulders still carry the memory of striking. The hand still wants to close around a hammer shaft. The forearm keeps a dull, steady ache. Even your hearing seems to wait for one more ring from the anvil, one more hiss from the tub. Instead, there are smaller sounds. A spoon against pottery, someone shifting on a stool, a child breathing close by, cloth brushing against the bench, quiet words about common things. In a smithing household, work and family braid together so tightly that it can be hard to say where one ends. Records do not always show this clearly, but daily life almost certainly did. A wife or other kin may keep accounts in the head better than on parchment. Someone has noticed who came, who promised payment, who still owes for hinges done before Lent or a chain mended after market day. Someone has carried water, watched the fire, swept ash from the threshold, sold a small finished piece to a caller while your hands were occupied at the anvil. The documents of towns and courts often name the master. The day itself is less narrow than the documents. So now, with evening set around you, the talk may return to practical matters. Not sharp, not hurried, just the plain laying out of tomorrow. There is more charcoal to mind. Bar iron is lower than you would like. One customer paid in coin, another in promise, another perhaps in produce now or later, if the season permits. A handle must be fitted. A horse may need shoeing if such work falls to you in this place. The division between smith and farrier is not the same everywhere, and much in a small town or village depends on custom more than tidy definition. So the list remains flexible, a little uncertain at the edges, as most medieval work does. A child may look at your hands while you eat. They are dark at the creases, even after washing. Small burns mark the skin. The nails hold black under them. To the household, these are not strange sights. They are as ordinary as flour on a baker or lanolin on a shepherd. Trade settles into the body and stays there. If there is an apprentice in the house or a young helper tied to the shop in some way, evening has its own quiet lessons. Not formal ones, no grand speech, just watching. watching how tools are set down rather than dropped, watching how scraps are sorted by size because iron costs too much to waste, watching how a customer's honesty is weighed without insult, watching how a grown trade is held together by memory, patience, and repetition more than by force. You tear bread slowly. The crust resists a little. The inside is plain and dry until pottage softens it. Hunger makes simple food feel larger than it is. Steam rises if the bowl is hot enough. It carries onion, grain, maybe cabbage, maybe a little fat if fortune has been kind. The taste is not rich, but it fills the mouth and asks very little thought. That is part of its comfort. Outside, the lane has quieter feet now. Voices pass and fade. Somewhere a door shuts. Somewhere an animal shifts in its stall. The whole settlement is drawing inward. In 1348, there may also be absences in these evening sounds. One house less noisy than before. One face not seen in some days. One delay in the usual pattern of visits and errands. It is fair to say the plague year shadows ordinary life, though the exact shape of that shadow would differ from place to place. Here in this room, the uncertainty is present not as drama but as a slight thinning of what used to be familiar. Still, the meal goes on. That is what people do. They go on with bowls, cups, benches, chores and mending because the day asks it. A garment may need a stitch. A strap may need looking at. A bit of leather may be set aside for tomorrow's use. Even after the forge is closed, hands continue smaller forms of labor almost without noticing. You feel the heaviness come down in stages. First in the legs, after standing since light, then in the lower back, then around the eyes, made tired not only by labor but by glare, smoke, and close looking all day long. The room is dimmer now. Firelight or lamplight softens edges. The bright authority of hot iron is gone. In its place there are muted surfaces. Wood, pottery, cloth, skin, bread. No one here expects grandeur from the evening. There is no grand conclusion to the labor. No cheering crowd for a well-shaped hinge. No tale worth carrying across the kingdom because a set of nails was forged true. The usefulness of the work is enough. The family gathering around it is enough. The body being fed and the bench being shared are enough. And gradually speech grows thinner. The bowl empties, the cup lightens. Someone sets aside what can wait until morning. The forge, only a short distance away, is quiet now, except for the occasional settling sound of cooling iron and timber. Home does not erase labor. It receives it. It gives the day somewhere to rest, before night takes hold a little more fully. By the time the last useful chore has been reduced to tomorrow's concern, night has settled properly over the workshop, the lane, and the roofs beyond. The forge is no longer a place of work. It is a shape in darkness, a smell in darkness, charcoal, damp ash, old heat fading. The tools rest where they were hung or laid, and because they rest, you may finally do the same. Before sleep, there is still the small order of closing. This matters more than comfort. It matters for safety. In a world of timber walls, straw, and close-built roofs, fire must be treated with respect every night. So embers are banked or smothered as prudence requires. Loose fuel is kept in its place. The floor, littered with scale and offcuts, is left in the kind of disorder a working day creates, but not in the kind that invites accident. Water remains near at hand. A smith does not forget what a spark can do after everyone else has gone to bed. You look once more at what waits for morning. A partly finished piece on the bench. Scraps worth saving in a small pile. Tongs leaning where they belong. The anvil silent on its block. In the half-light, it all seems smaller than it did by day. Less demanding. Almost patient. Then comes washing, if only in the modest sense the day allows. hands in water that is cooler now. Black runs from the skin, though never all of it. The creases keep their memory. The face may be rubbed with a cloth, the forearms too. The body is cleaner than before, but not truly clean. Medieval work seldom permits that. What matters is not purity, it is relief. When you flex your fingers, they answer slowly. Each joint has worked. Wrist, elbow, shoulder, back, knees, all have kept count of the hours. Blacksmithing is skilled work, but skill does not spare the body. It merely teaches the body how to spend itself with rhythm instead of waste. You have not won against labor. You have kept pace with it until dark. The place of sleep is simple. In some households, it may be a bed shared with others, with rope supports or boards beneath and a mattress of straw, flock, or other plain stuffing above. In humbler settings, it may be rougher still. Exact arrangements differ by income, place, and household size. But in any case, sleep comes close to the work, close to the smell of the day's trade, close to the sounds of other breathing in the dark. You lower yourself carefully, because tired muscles protest sudden movement. The first stillness is almost a surprise. After so many hours standing, turning, lifting, and striking, lying down feels like entering another craft entirely. The body spreads its weight in a way it has not all day. The shoulders release little by little, the hands open, even the jaw unclenches. Yet rest does not arrive all at once. The forge continues for a while inside you. Behind closed eyes there are still brief red shapes, the memory of heated iron. In the ear there is still a faint afterring, as if the anvil were sounding from farther and farther away. The arms remember their swing. The palm remembers wood, worn smooth by use. The whole day keeps moving a little, though you have stopped. Beside you, or somewhere near in the room, another sleeper turns. Straw shifts softly. A board creaks. From outside comes a late sound from the lane. Then nothing for a stretch. No clock marks the minutes. Time at night is measured by cooling, by silence, by the body's own sinking. You think, perhaps without trying very hard, of what tomorrow asks. More fuel, more heat, more repair. Another customer with a bent hinge or a cracked fitting or a bag of old nails to be matched. Another animal needing iron. Another conversation about payment. Another careful eye on supplies, especially in a year like 1348, when ordinary routines can fail without warning. Iron may be late. Charcoal may be late. A familiar face may not appear. These worries do not sharpen into a speech. They drift through dim and tired, then begin to loosen. Because for all the uncertainty, the next day is likely to resemble this one in its broad shape. Dawn, coals, bellows, hammer, bread, smoke, talk at the threshold, heat on the face, scale underfoot, counting, prayer, supper, dark. The life is repetitive, and repetition is one of its mercies. It tells the hands what to do before thought fully wakes. Your body knows this before your mind does. It has already begun to give itself over to sleep. The legs feel heavier. The breath lengthens. The sounds of the house move farther away, though they have not changed. The smell of smoke in the bedding, in the beams, in your hair, stops seeming like a smell at all. It becomes simply the air of life. Somewhere beyond the walls, animals settle. Somewhere farther, perhaps, a bell has long since marked the later hour, unheard or half-heard. The town or village lies in darkness with its own aches. Bakers, carters, labourers, servants, mothers, children, watchmen, priests, all folded into their separate nights. History rarely stops to notice such sleep. It notices decrees, deaths, prices, harvests, and wars. But most of medieval life is this instead. The ordinary surrender of tired bodies to darkness after plain work. You turn once, finding the place that asks least from the back and shoulder. The blanket or coverlet holds what warmth it can. Cold may press at the edges depending on season, wall, and wind. Comfort is relative. Rest is not softness so much as enough shelter to continue. And because you are tired enough, enough becomes plenty. The last thoughts are not noble ones, not grand plans, not speeches fit for chronicles, only fragments. Whether the ploughshare on the bench will take a clean weld, whether there is still enough charcoal for the morning before, more must be fetched. Whether the customer with the chain will return when promised, whether the weather will stay dry enough for carts to pass. Then even those plain thoughts begin to fade. The room darkens further behind the eyes. Breath settles into its own slow work. The forge is quiet. The household is quiet. Your hands, which all day were made for gripping, lifting, striking, and turning, finally do nothing at all. Night keeps the shop. Sleep keeps you. And somewhere beyond the shutters, beyond the lane, beyond the fields, tomorrow is already making its patient way toward another cold hearth and another ordinary dawn. And then, without ceremony, morning returns. Not all at once. First, there is the feeling of it, a faint loosening of darkness behind the shutters, a little cold gathered in the blankets, the smell of ash still resting in the room from yesterday's work. Sleep lets go slowly. The body comes back in parts, stiff fingers, a dry throat, shoulders that remember the hammer before the hammer is in your hand. You do not rise because anything new is waiting. You rise because the same things are waiting. The bench will still be scarred. The anvil will still hold its pale marks where hot iron struck and cooled. The slack tub will still smell faintly of wet metal. In the corner, the saved scraps from yesterday remain worth saving today. A short offcut can become a nail. A bent piece can become a hook. Iron costs too much to leave lying useless if it can be heated once more and persuaded into service. You dress in cloth that can bear soot and sparks. Fine things have no place here. The air bites a little as you move. In a shop tied close to the home, the passage from sleeping place to working place is short, but it changes the body all the same. Home is warmth held close. The forge is another kind of warmth, slower to earn and harder to keep. Yesterday's fire is gone except for what may still hide deep in the ash. Sometimes a careful banking of coals leaves a little life beneath the grey crust. Sometimes it does not. There is no heroism in either outcome. Only more or less work before dawn properly opens. You crouch at the hearth. Ash shifts softly. A dull glow may answer from below, or nothing at all. If there is a glow, it is fed with patient hands. If there is none, fresh charcoal must take the place of what the night consumed. Small sounds begin the day before any ringing does. The scrape of iron poker, the dry trickle of charcoal, the leather breath of bellows waking reluctantly, then more steadily. Air matters as much as fuel. Too little and the heat stays lazy. Too much and charcoal disappears too quickly while the fire grows harsh and wasteful. So the morning begins not with striking, but with tending. Watching colour, watching smoke, waiting for the centre of the fire to gather itself into proper brightness. This part is slower than people imagine. A smith's work is remembered for noise, but much of it depends on quiet looking. You watch the dark mouth of the hearth change by degrees. Black to red, red to orange, charcoal settling inward, small blue tongues at the edge, heat arranging itself into a place where iron may listen. Nearby are the familiar shapes of the trade, tongs with jaws made for different widths, hammer faces smooth from long use, chisel, punch, file, swage. Not many things. just enough things if they are sound. They are set where the hand can find them without searching too much. In a dim room in a long habit, tools live almost by touch. A helper may stir in the background if there is one in this household or shop. An apprentice, perhaps, old enough for bellows, carrying water, sorting fuel, standing near enough to learn and far enough to avoid the worst mistakes. Many begin that way, not by making fine work at once, but by repeating plain motions until the body understands what the eye has been seeing for months or years. The first heat of the day is not always given to the grandest job. Often it goes to what is ready and practical. A strip that needs drawing down, a bundle of rod to be cut into small lengths, nail blanks, rivets, staples. Work that asks for steadiness more than invention. The sort of work that fills shallow trays and pockets and keeps other work possible. Iron begins as stock brought from elsewhere, already smelted and worked into bars. In this shop, you shape it. You do not pull it from ore. That is another labour done in another place. Your part is the second life of iron, reheating, bending, thickening one place by upsetting it, joining a break by careful scarfing and welding when fortune and skill agree, mending what another hand thought finished until use wore it thin. When the first piece reaches the right colour, you lift it clear. The tongs bite. The walk from hearth to anvil is only a few steps. It is always only a few steps. But those steps are the centre of the trade. Fire to iron block, heat to shape, waiting to action. Then comes the sound again. Not loud in the way a crowd is loud. Not wild, just regular. Hammer on hot metal. A measured ringing softened by ash underfoot and timber around you. The face of the anvil returns each blow with a firmness the arm has known for years. Scale flakes away in black petals. A spark jumps and dies before it matters. The bar lengthens a little. A head begins to form where none was before. The morning outside is still only beginning. A cart may rattle somewhere distant. A cock may call from a yard you never see. A bell may mark the hour in the broad old way people understand. Not to the minute, but enough. First light has no need to hurry. Neither do you. The day will ask for many heats. One more is coming soon. You return the piece to the fire. That too is the work. Again and again. Heat, lift, strike, turn, heat again. The body learns not to resent the repetition because the repetition is the craft. Nothing useful is made in one blow. Nearly everything useful is made in many. As the room lightens, the workshop becomes itself once more. Wall pegs, floor scale, a basket of charcoal, finished pieces laid aside, half-finished pieces waiting their turn. The bench, carrying yesterday into today without complaint. A household not rich, not idle, but necessary. A forge in 1348 does not feel important in any grand sense. It feels needed in a plain one. Carts still break. Hose still loosen at the socket. Hinges still pull from doors. Horses still wear their shoes thin on bad roads. And so the next day does not truly begin with hope or dread. It begins with habit, with breath in the bellows, with heat in the charcoal, with your hand closing once more around a tool that already knows the shape of your grip. Dawn enters quietly. Work answers it in the same quiet way. By the time true daylight settles over the lane, the pattern is already in motion again. It is never exactly the same. One morning, a plough part waits by the door. Another morning, there is a broken hinge wrapped in cloth, or a length of chain, or a set of worn shoes to be matched as closely as possible. Yet the sameness is greater than the difference. Iron arrives damaged, thin, bent, loose, cracked, or merely unfinished. It leaves, if the day goes well, ready to bear use a little longer. You do not speak of this as a grand service. Few would. But in a village or town, practical things depend on iron more than they like to admit. Wood alone will not hold every strain. Leather alone will not answer every pull. A field tool meets stone. A cart takes a rut badly. A latch sags. A cooking hook twists. Work on the land and work in the house both lean toward this doorway sooner or later. Even before the first caller stands fully inside, there are small tasks to arrange. Fuel must be judged. Charcoal is not endless. It has to be carried, bought, bargained for, or delivered somehow. And in a year like 1348, none of those paths feel perfectly certain. A late cart, a missing carter, a road gone bad in rain, a household struck by sickness far down the chain of supply. Any one of these may leave the basket lower than you would like. The exact shape of such trouble changes from place to place, and no single shop can stand for all of them. But uncertainty itself belongs to the year, so you use what you have with care. A fire too fierce wastes tomorrow. A fire too weak wastes today. Saving fuel is not meanness. It is survival in a trade where every necessary thing costs another necessary thing. The first customer, if customer is even the right word, may not pay in coin at all. Coin is clean when it appears. Many days are not so clean. Payment may come later. After market, after harvest, after a cart sale, after a relative returns. Or payment may come partly in food, partly in promise, partly in the memory that this household settled honestly the last 2 times. The records for such small dealings are uneven, and many arrangements are local. But credit and trust sit close beside hammer and tongs in ordinary craft life. You weigh all this without making a speech about it. A man sets down a worn clevis pin or a snapped strap fitting. A woman asks whether a pot hook can be mended instead of replaced. Someone from a nearby holding wants nails. Not many, just enough. These are not dramatic decisions. They are the low negotiations that keep a workshop alive. The forge answers each one in the same language. Heat, shape, fit. Try again if the fit is poor. A broken iron piece is rarely thrown away at once. Good metal is too dear for that. If a section can be drawn out, patched, welded, shortened, or turned to some smaller use, it often is. What cannot remain a hinge may become staples. What cannot remain a strap may become rivets. The shop slowly fills with these second chances. Piles of pieces that look finished to anyone else but not to you. Their value is not in what they are. It is in what they may still become when the need is small enough. As the sun rises higher, the body remembers yesterday, even while serving today. The heel of the hand grows warm from the hammer haft. The shoulder loosens and then tightens again in its old path. Smoke catches faintly in the throat. The eyes narrow against sparks and colour. This is skilled work, but not delicate in the sense of ease. Skill here means wasting less motion. It means using rhythm instead of struggle whenever possible. It means knowing from the iron's colour when to stop striking, because another blow on cooling metal will only spoil the shape and force another heat. A village child may pause outside to hear the ring and move on. A passerby may smell charcoal and damp ash before seeing the doorway. The forge has its own weather, warmer than the lane, darker than the yard, grit underfoot. A little steam rising when hot metal nears water. In winter, the room can feel almost kind until you stand too long by the open door. In summer, it can feel close and tiring even before noon. Season changes the shop, though the motions remain. And beyond your doorway, the wider world keeps pressing in softly. Church time still measures the day more surely than any personal clock. Market habits shape when people appear. Town rules, if you live under them, may shape what you sell, where you work, or how your craft is judged. Fire risk never leaves the mind entirely in a timber place with open heat. A forge is useful. It is also dangerous. One careless coal where it should not be, one neglected ember, and usefulness turns into trouble. So part of the trade is vigilance so ordinary it almost disappears from thought. Perhaps there is a younger pair of hands nearby again, working the bellows in slow pulls. Learning not through explanation alone, but through the long boredom of standing close, fetching tools, noticing what heat does to thick iron and what it does to thin. Apprenticeship is often less like revelation and more like weathering, day after day, stroke after stroke. At first, the learner serves the fire. Much later, if years and luck allow, the fire may seem to serve the learner. By now, the lane is awake enough that the quiet of night feels far away, though it has not been gone long. Somewhere bread is being cut. Somewhere animals are being turned out. Somewhere another craft begins its own repeated labour. Your trade is only one among many, but it is tied to many of them. A cooper needs hoops, a farmer needs fittings, a carter needs repairs, a household needs hooks and latches, and small, patient things that do not become memorable until they fail. That is why the day returns so easily to its old path. Not because life is simple, and not because 1348 has spared anyone uncertainty, but because useful work leaves little room for ornament. There is iron to reheat. There are promises to keep as best you can. There are scraps to save. There is charcoal to make last. There are aches that come back with the light and soften only once the arm begins moving. Soon enough, this next dawn will become morning fully, and morning will become another string of ordinary tasks. Then another meal, another set of small troubles, another cooling fire, another bench in shadow, another night. For now, though, the day is still young enough to feel plain and open. The forge breathes. The bellows answer. Iron reddens in the heart of the fire. You lift it free once more. The anvil waits where it always waits, and the life history rarely writes down continues in the old steady rhythm, one careful blow at a time. The heat settles into a steadier kind of afternoon. Not cooler, only more familiar. The forge is no longer something you notice all at once. It becomes the air itself. Smoke in the rafters, fine black dust on the floor, a faint taste of iron at the back of the mouth. The loudest part of the day has passed, and now the quieter work presses in around it. A man comes for the hinge you set aside earlier. He lifts it, turns it once in his hand, and nods in the small way people do when they mean the thing is sound enough. That matters more than praise. Fine words do not keep a gate on its post. He reaches for his purse, but not very quickly. Sometimes there is coin. Sometimes there is less coin than expected. Sometimes there is none at all, only a promise tied to market day, or to harvest, or to the next time a pig is sold, or to some cousin who still owes him. Iron is solid. Payment is softer. You listen. You weigh the hinge again in your hand, though you already know its weight. A smith cannot eat promises, but a smith also cannot quarrel with every neighbour. In a village and even in a small town, the same faces return. The same households bring split hose, bent hasps, loose tires, worn shoes, snapped hooks. If you refuse everyone who asks for a little time, the work thins. If you trust everyone, the purse thins. So the day includes this as surely as it includes hammering. You measure people almost as often as you measure iron. Some debts are kept in the head. This household owes for 2 nails, that one for a cart strap mended in wet weather, another for a billhook edge dressed before haytime. Some shops would mark accounts with tallies, notches, scraps of writing, or memory shared inside the household. The exact habits vary from place to place. What does not vary is the slow creep of unfinished payment. It gathers as quietly as soot. A wife, daughter, or other family member may know these reckonings nearly as well as you do, perhaps better. Records often leave such help in shadow, but the shop does not run on hammer strokes alone. Someone remembers who paid in good coin and who paid in onions, who brought charcoal, who asked for credit in winter and settled honestly after harvest. Someone notices when the flour jar is low and the purse still light. Work and household fold into one another here. The forge opens into the home, and the home leans back into the forge. Then there are the larger claims. Not the claims of neighbours, but the claims above them. Tolls, fees, rents, local obligations. In some places, a town craft is watched by guild rules, by market custom, by officers who care what may be sold, how honestly it is made, and who has the right to sell it. In another place, the pressures come more from manor dues, borough demands, stolage at market, or a lay subsidy that reaches down from far above your lane and hearth. The names change with the place. The feeling does not. A portion of work is always already spoken for. You do not shape tax into visible form the way you shape a hook or staple. That may be what makes it more tiring. The hinge on the bench can be lifted, the horseshoe can be counted, the nail can be held to the light. A fee is only absence. Coin gone, grain gone, time gone. A day spent making what others need, and then some part of that day passing out of your hand before it can warm your own table. If this is a town, the rules may carry a little shelter along with their burden. Craft organization can protect standards, training, and who may compete. It can also limit you, inspect you, fine you, or bind you to custom. If this is a village, the web is looser perhaps, but not lighter. A necessary man is still not a free man in the broadest sense. There is always someone above the anvil, even if he never picks up a hammer. And all this sits under the long shadow of 1348. Not as a shouted disaster in the lane every minute, but as an uncertainty that makes ordinary reckoning harder. A carrier fails to arrive. A customer delays because another house has fallen quiet. A usual market rhythm slips by a week or two. A face you expect does not appear. The exact shape of that unease changes from one place to another, and any one blacksmith's day must be partly reconstructed. Still, the year itself presses at the edges. You feel it in pauses, in waiting, in fewer sure answers when asking when iron stock may come, or when payment may be settled. So the afternoon narrows into little acts of counting. You gather offcuts into one place because scrap is worth saving. Small pieces become rivets, patches, nail stock. You check the remaining charcoal and judge how much can be spent before dusk. You think about what is owed to you and what you owe onward in your turn. This plain arithmetic belongs to the trade as much as the anvil does. Another customer appears with a request too small to be refused, and too small to pay much. A bent latch, 3 staples, the kind of work that fills the spaces between larger jobs and makes a day look busy even when the purse stays modest. You heat a narrow strip, turn it, flatten it, punch where needed, cool it in the tub. Steam lifts. The smell is sharp and damp. He thanks you, perhaps pays in coin, perhaps in kind, perhaps not until later. The object leaves your hand. The need it answered stays in the world somewhere, hanging on a door or fixed to a chest, and by evening, another small task has taken its place. This is part of the respect a smith holds. Necessary skill, strong arms, useful fire. But it is also part of the limit. You are needed every day, and that does not mean you are comfortable. It only means people knock when iron fails. Outside, the light has shifted without drama. Boards, tools, and ash look softer now. the lane beyond the doorway grows a little less bright. Afternoon is giving itself over, slowly, to the bells and habits of evening. The hammer rests for a moment. Then your hand reaches for it again, because there is still a little daylight left, and daylight is its own kind of coin. By the time the light begins to lean golden at the doorway, the body knows before the mind does that the day is turning. Shoulders sink a little. The hand that grips the hammer does not fail, but it closes more slowly. Even the ring of iron changes, not in sound alone, in the way it lands inside the chest after so many hours of hearing it. Somewhere beyond the shop, bells begin to speak across the roofs, not precise in the modern way, not minutes and numbered hours, only the old shared measure of the day. Dawn, mass, evening prayer, curfew in some towns, a common rhythm carried in the air reaching baker, widow, child, priest, fuller, cartman and smith alike. You do not need to count the strokes exactly. You know what they mean by habit. The working day must begin folding itself inward. That does not always mean the work stops at once. A last heat is often worth taking. One more staple. One more nail rod cut and headed while the fire is still good. One more pass at straightening a bar while the color is right. Daylight matters. Fuel matters. It is easier to finish a simple task now than begin it cold tomorrow. So you use what remains. The bellows breathe a little less often. The forge, which ruled the center of the day, now feels almost companionable. Its roar has quieted to a steady red heart. You rake the charcoal, bringing the live pieces inward, letting the spent ash fall away. The lesson of the trade is not only how to make heat, but how not to waste it. Charcoal costs labor long before it reaches your hearth. Trees felled, wood stacked, earth packed over the burn, loads carried, money changed hands. Every shovel of fuel has already had a life before this one. You finish the piece at hand and set it down among others cooling on the bench. Their shapes are plain. A hinge, a hook, a strap, a pair of nails, perhaps a rough shoe waiting to be fitted another day. No great art from a courtly chest. No jeweled reliquary. Only the iron that keeps common life from falling apart all at once. And now, with the bells still faintly hanging over the lane, thought begins to leave the work itself and move elsewhere. To prayer, perhaps. To custom. To the simple understanding that labor does not fill the whole person, even when it fills most of the daylight. In Christian Europe, the church marks not only feast days and fast days, but the shape of ordinary hours. A craftsman may attend, may pray at home, may pause only inwardly if work or distance keeps him from every service. Practice differs by town, by season, by duty, by how near the parish stands. But the sound of the bell reaches almost everyone. You wipe a forearm across the brow and leave a dark streak on skin already darkened by the day. The apron hangs heavy. The sleeves smell of smoke and damp wool. In another trade, evening may come with clean ledgers or swept cloth. Here it comes with cinders in the cuffs and a fine glitter of scale caught in the cracks of the floor. If the church is near enough, and the household arranged for it, you may step out for prayer once the urgent labor eases. The lane feels strange after the workshop, cooler, wider. The ears still expect the anvil and instead find footsteps. A cart somewhere farther off, a dog, low voices, the fading bell. The whole world seems padded after the forge. Even mud under the shoe feels quiet. If you remain at home, the pause may be smaller and just as real. A brief prayer spoken standing, a sign of devotion learned long ago. A bowed head before bread is broken. Medieval religion is woven into the day less like a separate event and more like a thread through cloth. Not always emotional, not always lofty, often habitual, sometimes weary, still present, still. The year 1348 gives these evening bells another weight as well, though not one easily measured. Prayers may carry familiar needs and newer ones. For health, for absent kin, for neighbours gone missing from their usual path, for mercy in a world where causes are not always visible and remedies are few. You do not stand in the shop naming great events. You only notice that the village, or street, or parish does not feel quite as settled as it once did. A little more listening, a little more counting of who has and has not been seen. Then the work of closing resumes in its plain order. Tongs back to their peg, hammer to its place, chisel, punch, hardy, file. Good tools are too costly to treat carelessly. You check the slack tub. The water smells of iron and soot. A skin of ash drifts on top until the surface trembles. You sweep larger scraps together with the foot or a rough broom. Tiny flakes of scale remain, dark as fish skin, scattered where they fell. They will still be there tomorrow. A shop is never fully finished, only paused. The fire must be reduced with care. Left wild, it threatens the building. Killed completely, it demands more fuel and labor at dawn. So you bank it, you draw in the coals, you cover what should last. You leave the forge not dead, but sleeping. That is often the truest evening task, not ending the work, only teaching it to rest. Behind you, household sounds begin to overtake workshop sounds. A pot shifted, a stool moved across the floor. Quiet voices. Perhaps a child asking for bread. Perhaps someone sorting the day in simple words. Who came? Who paid? Who still owes? Whether enough charcoal remains? Whether tomorrow must begin with horseshoes or a plough repair? Such talk is not separate from the trade. It is the trade, softened by walls and dusk. Your hands open and close once or twice with no tool in them. The fingers feel oddly empty. The palms hold their own warmth. In the fading light, the bench, the anvil, the tub, the fuel basket, all return to stillness. The bells have passed. Evening has taken the lane, and the forge, after speaking all day in breath and sparks and ringing iron, has almost nothing left to say. Beyond the workshop wall, evening becomes household time. The change is quiet. No great line divides labor from home. The same smoke clings to both. The same floorboards carry both trade and family. The forge is only a few steps away, and even cooling iron seems to remain part of the room, as if the day has not quite finished letting go of you. Supper is plain. Bread, perhaps a little pottage, onions, cheese if there is some, ale watered by habit and cost. Nothing here is arranged to impress. The meal is built to continue the body into tomorrow. Your hands, still dark in the creases, lift food more slowly now than they lifted hammers a little earlier. The fingers do not fully relax at once. They keep their shape as though a set of tongs might still be resting there. You sit where space allows. In many craft households, work and family life are closely tied together. A shop is not a separate world reached by a long walk. It is part of the same narrow holding, the same rent, the same worries, the same pot over the fire. Family members may help in ways the records only partly notice. Someone keeps account of who paid in coin, who paid in grain, who has promised to settle after harvest. Someone shakes soot from cloth. Someone carries water. Someone minds a child while a hinge is handed over at the door. The trade depends on more hands than the anvil alone admits. So the talk of supper is often the talk of work, only softened. Which customer came? Which one did not? Whether the bar iron is running low, whether charcoal must be bought dearer next week, whether a cartman has failed to arrive. In 1348, such absences may feel heavier than usual. Roads still exist, markets still open in some places. Bread is still baked, yet rumour rides ahead of carts now. News comes in pieces. A parish nearby has buried more than usual. A trader did not appear. A household has shut its door. The exact pattern changes from place to place, and no one at this table can see very far beyond the next village. Still, uncertainty has a way of entering even a plain meal. You eat anyway. People in every century do. The spoon moves through pottage. The bread is broken. The body asks for fuel just as the forge asked for charcoal. There is comfort in that simple honesty. Hunger is direct. Heat, work, food, and sleep arrange the world into manageable things. If there are children near, they know the workshop by sound before they know it by trade. The ring of hammer on iron, the cough of smoke, the hiss from the tub. They learn early that hot metal is not to be touched, that tools are not toys, that a horseshoe left on a bench can still hold heat long after it has darkened. If there is an apprentice in the household, he does not fully leave work behind either. Apprenticeship in this period often means years of ordinary service as much as sudden mastery. Bellows first, sweeping scale, sorting scrap, fetching water, watching, waiting, learning the right colour of hot iron by repeated looking, not by grand instruction. So evening may bring small lessons without ceremony. A bent nail held up and judged, a broken strap fitting turned in the fingers. A reminder that waste is expensive. Iron costs too much to throw aside when it can be cut down, reforged, upset, punched, or turned to smaller use. Scraps become rivets. Offcuts become nails. A damaged piece may yet become a hook for a door or a staple for a chest. The household economy is made of such saving. Little pieces kept in a box or basket, little debts remembered, little repairs offered before a customer asks the price of something new. Your shoulders cool more slowly than the room. Heat lingers inside the joints. A blacksmith's labor is not only strength, it is repetition. Turn, lift, strike, return to the fire, watch the color, strike again. The body carries those motions into stillness. Even seated, you may feel the ghost of the hammer's rhythm moving somewhere in the arm. There may be prayer before or after the meal. There may only be a brief sign of devotion, a few familiar words, a bow of the head. Church teaching shapes the year, the fasts, the feast days, the hours heard by bells. Yet religion here, as in many homes, sits beside practical thought without argument. Holiness and household smoke share the same air. You can think of God and of charcoal in the same minute. You can wonder about the sick in another parish, while also wondering whether the hinge by the door needs one more rivet. Outside, the lane grows quieter. Hooves pass less often. Voices thin out. In a town, some sound still drifts along timber fronts and narrow alleys. In a village, darkness settles wider and more quickly. Either way, the day folds inward. Finished pieces rest where they can be collected in the morning. Unfinished work waits without complaint. Iron is patient. It will be there tomorrow. The meal ends without drama. Bowls are scraped, crumbs are kept. A stool shifts on the floor. Someone adds a little fuel to the domestic fire. Someone covers what remains. Someone counts, perhaps not on parchment, but in memory, what the day has brought and what it has failed to bring. You listen to these small reckonings. They are the true measure of an ordinary craft life. Not fame, not praise, just whether the household can continue. And slowly, with the forge cooling behind the wall and the room settling around you, supper becomes evening, and evening begins its steady walk towards sleep. At last, there is nothing more to shape tonight. The fire in the forge has been reduced as far as is safe. Useful scraps are put aside. Tools rest on pegs or on the bench, where your hand will find them again at dawn. The anvil stands in the dark, like a patient block of night. When work stops, the silence is never complete. Ash settles. A board creaks. Someone turns in another part of the house. But compared with the day's ringing labor, this is a deep quiet. You prepare for sleep in a room that still carries the trade. Smoke has its home in cloth and beams. Iron dust and scale have traveled farther than anyone intended. Even if the bed is separated from the forge, the smithy follows you by smell. Charcoal, damp leather, old ash, heated metal cooled hours ago. They cling to the skin and hair and sleeves. Cleanliness, in the modern sense, is not the goal at the end of such a day. Rest is the goal. The bed itself is simple. A frame if fortune allows. Ropes or boards beneath. A mattress stuffed with straw, wool or other local filling. Blankets, coarse linen, shared warmth. Exact arrangements differ from household to household, and records do not always tell us every detail. But comfort in this century usually means shelter from draught, some dry bedding, and enough cover to hold the night's heat. Luxury is not required for deep sleep when labor has used the body thoroughly. Your hands are the last part of you to settle. Small burns tighten as the skin cools. The wrists carry a dull heaviness. The back reminds you of bending at the fire and straightening at the anvil. The ears, after a day of hammer strikes, seem almost to expect another blow that never comes. Sometimes the quiet after steady noise feels like a sound of its own. You lie down with tomorrow already faintly present. A smith's day rarely ends as a clean, finished line. There are always pieces waiting. Nails to make in quantity, a hinge to punch and bend, a broken tool that may or may not survive another heating, a horse that might be brought in early, a customer who promised coin and may arrive with excuses instead. Trade is made of this repetition. The same needs return because wood cracks, carts loosen, doors sag, ploughs wear, and hooves do not stop growing. In 1348, another uncertainty lies over all these ordinary thoughts. Not a grand story spoken aloud every moment, more like a pressure in the distance, illness elsewhere, missing people, delays no one can fully explain. Perhaps your own town has not yet suffered the worst. Perhaps it has only begun to hear enough to grow uneasy. Perhaps the changes are already in the lane outside and in the gaps between visits from customers. The exact nearness of plague cannot be assigned with perfect confidence to one night's sleep in one smith's house. But the year itself makes unease plausible, even in a room where nothing dramatic is happening at all. And still, sleep comes by old routes, through weariness, through darkness, through habit, through the body's plain surrender after heat and strain. You shift once, finding the place where the shoulder complains least. Straw rustles. The blanket is drawn higher. Breath slows. Somewhere not far off, an animal moves in its stall. A dog answers some small night sound and then thinks better of it. If there is a curfew bell in town, it has already gone. If not, the village has its own curfew in darkness itself. Few people choose to move much now without cause. The roads are poor. The light is poor. Tomorrow comes early enough without meeting it in the lane. You think, perhaps, for a moment about the forge at rest, whether the embers were banked well, whether enough charcoal remains dry, whether the water tub should be filled sooner in the morning. Such thoughts do not sharpen into worry for long. Tiredness is stronger. The body lowers its own gait. This too is part of the blacksmith's work, not just the making, but the ending, knowing when iron must cool, knowing when the arm has done enough for one day, knowing that skill cannot be forced out of an exhausted hand late at night by poor light. Daylight is worth coin. Sleep is worth almost as much. Beside you or near you, others settle. Craft households rarely sleep in complete solitude. Breathing overlaps in the dark. A child murmurs and then quiets. Someone coughs once. Straw shifts. Then stillness returns. Medieval life is often imagined as crowded with spectacle, but most nights are only this. A dim room, tired limbs, familiar smells. The low certainty that morning will ask for the same labor again. Your eyes close on no grand ending. No lesson arrives. No history book opens above the bed to explain what this life means. The meaning is in the repetition itself. Useful work, modest skill, necessary repair. Heat by day, bread at dusk, rest at night. And little by little, the forge leaves your muscles. The ringing leaves your ears. The smoke-soft dark closes over the room. Outside, the Middle Ages continue in their usual way. One shuttered house beside another, one sleeping animal, one banked fire, one waiting tool. By dawn, the bench will still be there. The bellows will still be there. The anvil will still be there. Iron will ask once more to be heated, held and struck into usefulness. But not yet. For now, you sleep. Some time before dawn, without any great announcement, the dark begins to loosen again. You wake into it slowly, not because you are fully rested, only because the habit of the trade is older than comfort. The room is still close with last night's smoke, wool, and the faint, dry scent of charcoal carried in from the workshop. Beside you, the house remains quiet. A board settles. Someone turns in sleep. Outside, a cart does not yet pass. Even the dogs for a little while keep to themselves. Your body remembers the forge before your thoughts do. The shoulders are stiff first, then the hands, then the small ache through the forearm that comes from holding tongs half the day, and a hammer through the other half. Nothing is injured, nothing is dramatic. It is only yesterday, still resting in the joints. You sit up into the chill and feel how different morning air is from forge air. It has no weight of heat in it, no iron in it, no bellows breath, just the plain cool of early day finding cracks in shutters and doorboards. Clothes go on in a familiar order. Wool, linen, leather where it is needed. Nothing elegant, nothing meant to stay clean. Before the lane begins to stir, the workshop asks for your attention again. You move toward it with the slowness of someone who knows exactly what waits on the other side of the door. Bench, anvil, ash, tools where they were left. A floor marked by scale and old sparks. The same small kingdom of useful things. The fire from last night has slept better than you have. Under the ash, a little life may still remain. That much depends on how carefully it was banked. Sometimes there is a red eye waiting under grey dust. Sometimes there is almost nothing, and the day must be built from cold charcoal and patience. Either way, the first labour is quiet labour. You rake gently. Ash shifts in soft heaps. A dim colour answers from underneath, then fades, then answers again. There it is, not much, enough. You add fresh charcoal in a careful ring, not too much at once. Fuel costs effort before it costs money. Someone cut wood for it, someone burned it to charcoal, someone carried it here. Every black piece in the basket is time made solid. The bellows are still. The leather hangs with a tired looseness. When you begin to work them, the forge inhales after its long night and then gives back a little heat. The first breaths are weak, then steadier. The coal answers with a dull glow, then with orange under black. A thread of smoke climbs up and finds its way toward the vent and rafters. The day begins, not with a burst, but with a coaxing. This part is always slower than the middle of the day will be. No customers yet, no bargaining, no quick repair thrust into your hands. Only the old agreement between hand, fuel, iron, and time. The fire must be persuaded before it can be used. You check the tools as the light slowly changes outside. Hammerheads, tongs, chisel, punch. Hardy hole clear enough for what may need cutting later. The slack tub still holds water, dark and patient. Scrap remains where it was sorted yesterday evening, short lengths and bent pieces not worth wasting. Iron is too dear to treat carelessly. A crooked fragment may become a nail may become a hook may help hold together some other person's ordinary life. There are pieces waiting already. A hinge promised, a strap to be tightened and refitted, a handful of small items that can be done while the fire finds its full strength. This is one reason the work repeats so neatly from day to day. Morning belongs well to smaller things. The body wakes with them, the forge warms with them, the mind settles with them. When the first bar goes into the heart of the charcoal, you watch color more than shape. Medieval ironwork depends on the eye as much as the arm. The right heat is not read from an instrument. It is learned by long looking. Dull red, brighter red, orange when the work asks for it. Too little heat wastes blows. Too much can spoil the piece. So you wait and turn and wait again. At the anvil, the first ringing of the new day sounds smaller than it will later. Measured blows, not heavy, just enough to draw out a point, flatten a head, square an end, begin a bend. The hammer lands with the old plain certainty that has shaped every useful object in this workshop. Strike, turn, lift, lower. Nothing in it asks to be admired, it asks only to be done properly. Soon enough, the lane begins to wake around you. A door opens somewhere near. Feet move over damp earth or cobble. A voice keeps low in the morning. A rooster, late or early, makes no difference. Somewhere beyond the workshop walls, bells may mark the hour in the broad old way they do, not telling minutes, only telling people that the day has begun enough to belong to labor. In 1348, even this hour can feel thinner than it once did. That much is possible. A place may sound quieter if fewer hands remain to make its ordinary noise. Or nothing may seem changed at dawn except the private count each household keeps and does not say aloud. The records left to later centuries do not give you one perfect morning from one exact smith. They give pieces, rules, tools, taxes, repairs, wages. The rest is careful joining. So you live here in what is known and rest lightly where the edges blur. The first customer of the new day has not arrived yet. But work has. Work always does. It is already in the iron warming in the coals, already in the charcoal dust under your nails, already in the breath of the bellows, and the slight sting beginning in your eyes. The forge is awake again. And so, because it must be, are you. By the time morning has properly taken hold, the workshop is no longer waking. It is working. The fire has found its voice again. Not loud, just steady. The breathing push of the bellows, the low shifting crackle of charcoal, the bright note of hammer on iron. The softer sounds in between which matter just as much. Tongs set down on wood, scale brushed from the anvil face, water touched by hot metal and answering with a short hiss. These are the sounds that make up a life more truthfully than any grand event ever could. You stand where you stood yesterday, nearly where you stood the day before that. The posture changes little. Feet planted for balance, one side of the body doing more of the turning. One hand guiding heat, one hand measuring force. The work is physical, but not wild. A good smith is not simply strong. A good smith is exact enough to save effort. A narrow strip of iron, heated and lifted from the fire, becomes several nails before the morning has gone very far. Point first, then cut, then head, repeated small making. The kind of labor that hardly deserves mention in a chronicle and yet holds doors, chests, boards, shutters, roofs, carts, and stalls together. A day can be spent in such pieces and still be a useful day. One small job follows another in the quiet order that keeps a workshop alive. A staple for timber, a hook for hanging a pot or tool, a rivet to mend what someone else cannot afford to replace. In a world where iron costs enough to matter, repair outranks novelty. New goods are welcome. Old goods brought back to service are often more welcome still. A broken fitting waits on the bench, one of yesterday's leftovers. The edges are cleaned, the damaged part is heated. If the metal can be drawn, upset, joined, or patched, it is worth trying. Medieval smiths do not throw away sound iron lightly. Reforging and reusing are part of the trade as naturally as striking and quenching. Waste is a luxury for other worlds. So you work the piece again. Back into the fire, out to the anvil. A few blows, back to the fire. Heat is never permanent. Shape is never permanent either until the iron cools enough to keep it. This constant movement between furnace and anvil gives the day its rhythm. Walk 2 steps, turn, lift, strike, return. A person could almost sleep to it if not for the sparks. The air warms early in here, even when the season outside would rather stay cold. Smoke gathers in old familiar layers. Some rises cleanly enough. Some drifts where it pleases before finding its way upward. Your eyes narrow against it. Your throat knows it. Your clothes know it. The whole shop keeps the smell. Charcoal, damp ash, hot scale, a little steam. Old wood. It follows you home each night and returns with you each morning as faithful as a dog and less affectionate. There may be help in the shop, depending on means and circumstance. An apprentice. A youth tied to the trade by agreement. A family member carrying water, or sorting charcoal, or minding who comes to the door. Many workshops depend on more hands than records bother naming. If someone works the bellows while you hold the iron, the whole room settles into a shared pace. If no one is there, the labor simply returns to your own arms. The fire does not care who serves it, only whether the air arrives. Outside, the world begins to ask for iron again. A farmer wants a repaired hoe before fieldwork. A carter notices a fitting loosening at exactly the wrong time. Someone needs a hinge because a door is no good without it. Someone needs a hook because every household hangs things. Someone else comes with payment now or with a promise to settle later. In town or village, cash, kind, and credit can sit side by side in the same week. A smith learns to hear the difference between delay and honest difficulty. And over all of this, in the year 1348, there is the quiet uncertainty no hammer can shape. Deliveries may not come when expected. Charcoal may be delayed. Iron stock may be harder to replace. Familiar faces may be absent from the lane. It is reasonable to imagine this, though not every place feels it in the same way or at the same hour. History can say the great sickness spreads. It cannot tell you exactly how this one morning sounds in every street. So the day remains ordinary and shadowed at once, which is often how human lives are lived. Still, the ordinary keeps going. It has to. The forge does not pause for fear. Animals still need shoes where smith and farrier work overlap. Plough fittings still crack. Cart parts still shake loose. Knives still dull. Hinges still sag. A timber house still needs iron to behave itself. Useful work survives beside worry. You feel this in the hands most of all. Not in big thoughts, in the grip tightening around tongs worn smooth by years of use. In the thumb pressing a piece into place against the anvil edge. In the shoulder that has learned how much force a certain thickness requires. Skill is memory stored in muscle. It speaks quietly and all day long. The light outside grows stronger now, though inside the forge the true brightness still comes from the fire itself. Orange in the coals, white-grey on fresh scale, brief stars where sparks leap and die. The workshop floor gathers more evidence of effort with each passing minute. Flakes of scale, fine ash, a clipped end of iron, a damp mark near the slack tub. None of it looks important. All of it is the shape of the trade. Soon the morning will thicken into the day's fuller traffic. More requests, more decisions, more small reckonings of time, fuel, effort, and what each piece is worth. But for now, the work remains manageable. One object, then the next. One heat, then the next. One measured ringing line after another, spreading into the lane and then fading there. And so the day begins again in the truest way it can. Not with novelty, not with surprise, with repetition, with useful iron made useful once more. With your body taking up its old place beside the anvil, as if the night had only been a pause. In a sentence, the trade has been speaking for generations. The dawn is no longer coming. It is here. The forge is hot. The tools are in hand, and the long plain work of another medieval day has started again. As the light begins to lean toward evening, the work loses none of its weight, but it does lose a little of its speed. You do not stop at once. Medieval days rarely stop at once. They thin out, they loosen at the edges. The brightest rush of morning has passed. The heavy middle of afternoon has passed. Now the forge settles into that later rhythm when each task is considered against what daylight remains, what charcoal remains, and what strength remains in your shoulders. The bell from the church reaches you in a softened way. Not close, not loud, just enough to remind the lane that another part of the day has arrived. In towns and villages alike, bells sort life into familiar portions. You do not own a clock with hands. You do not need one. You know the day by sound, by hunger, by the angle of light in the doorway, by the way the fire looks against the darkening room. A final customer may still appear. Sometimes one does. A man with a bent hinge in his hand. A woman sent from a household that needs a hook or latch mended. A farm servant carrying a small iron piece wrapped in cloth, as if that keeps it from being urgent. Their requests are rarely grand. They are almost always plain. But plain things still hold a household together. A broken clasp means a chest does not close. A weak staple means an animal enclosure does not hold. A loose tool fitting means tomorrow's labor begins badly. So you weigh what can be done now and what must wait. That judgment is part of the trade as surely as striking hot iron. Some work needs the full heat of your attention. Some can be set aside. Some customers can pay now. Some promise later. Some have paid before and so are trusted. Some have not, and so their words feel lighter than their iron. Payment is not always a coin laid down at once. In a place like this, work may move on promise, on habit, on harvest, on memory. A better season may settle one debt. A poor season may stretch another. Exact arrangements differ from town to town and village to village, and no single day can stand for all of them. But you know the common truth of it. Iron leaves your hand today. Payment may not arrive with the same certainty. On the bench or board where you keep track, the count is simple because it has to be. Nails made, shoe fitted, hinge repaired, strap end replaced. Bar stock reduced, charcoal used. Small debts noted in the plainest way. You are not a great merchant, you are a working smith. Records, where kept, are practical things. They exist to stop memory from being overburdened. In a larger town, a craft organization may shape some of this life more closely. Rules about fair work, rules about who may sell what, rules about training, standards, and the honest making of goods. Fire rules matter too, because your trade keeps heat alive inside timber walls. In a smaller place, custom may do more of the work than written rule. Either way, you live under expectation. The iron should hold, the hole should be punched cleanly, the weld should not fail because of haste. A bad piece speaks against you long after it leaves the forge. That is why the last hour is not careless. If anything, it can become more careful. Tired hands must behave like steady hands. You take up a small repair that suits the lowering light. A cracked ring is reheated, the ends are cleaned, the join is prepared. You bring the iron back to workable color and close the gap with measured blows. The work is ordinary, it is also exact. If the surfaces are not ready, if the heat is wrong, if the strike lands poorly, the repair becomes another failure waiting to happen. The bellows breathe again. Leather folds open and close. Air feeds charcoal. Charcoal feeds heat. Heat softens iron. The sequence is so familiar it almost ceases to feel like a sequence at all. It feels like the natural order of the room. Bellows, fire, tongs, anvil, hammer, slack tub, steam, back to fire, back to anvil. So much of your life passes in these returns. A younger helper, if one is with you, has grown quieter by now. Apprentices learn not only the motions of the shop, but its tiredness. They learn how the day drags a little at the end. They learn that skill is not only knowing how to strike, but how to continue striking when the arms are dull and the room is close with heat and ash. Much apprenticeship is exactly this kind of repetition. Carrying fuel, watching color, turning stock, learning patience before mastery. The air in the smithy holds layers by evening. Old smoke in the rafters, fresh smoke near the forge mouth, damp rising from the slack tub, the mineral smell of scale underfoot, the faint sourness of dried sweat in wool and leather. Nothing here is clean in the polished sense, but it is known. Every object has its place. Every mark on the anvil face has been earned. Every scar in the wooden block beneath it has come from years of impact. Outside, the lane is quieter than it was. Carts are fewer. Voices are fewer. Animals are being led back, tied up, shut in, or fed. Some cooking fires have begun. You might catch the smell of supper from another house and feel your own hunger answer. But first, there is still the last sorting of the work. Finished pieces go to one side. Pieces awaiting collection are kept apart from pieces awaiting repair. Scraps worth saving are not thrown away. Iron is too useful for that. Even small offcuts may become rivets, nails, patches, or hooks another day. A trade in iron teaches thrift without needing to preach it. The floor may look littered, but not everything there is waste. You notice too what is missing. A bar that should have come has not come. Charcoal stores are lower than you would prefer. In 1348, such absences may feel heavier than usual. Not every delay means the same thing, and no single village or town lives this year in exactly the same way. But there is enough uncertainty in the roads, enough interruption in labor and traffic, that an ordinary shortage feels less ordinary. You do not stand still and wonder over it for long. The forge allows little time for brooding. Still, you count what remains with a slightly closer eye. One more small job, one more heat, one more clean ringing line from hammer to anvil. The sound does not carry the morning's vigor now. It is softer in spirit, even when the blow itself is hard. Work at this hour is less about beginning and more about bringing things to a proper close. And slowly, almost without ceremony, the day begins to fold itself toward evening prayer, supper, and the long cooling of iron. Now the last useful heat is taken from the fire. Not all at once. Not with a dramatic ending. The forge is closed in the same patient way it was opened, by small decisions made one after another. You finish what is already in hand if it can be finished well. What cannot be finished well tonight is left for morning. That is not failure, it is ordinary sense. The final piece is set aside on the bench to cool. Its dark color returns slowly from red to black. As it cools, the scale on its surface loosens in thin flakes. Some cling, some drop. They join the little black and grey scatter already underfoot, the steady dust of your trade. By the end of many years, a smithy floor can tell a quiet history in ash, slag, charcoal crumbs, and iron scale. You lower the pace of the bellows. Air comes less often. The bright center of the charcoal bed shrinks. Heat remains, but it is no longer being urged to full strength. Charcoal is not something to waste. It took wood, labor, and careful burning elsewhere before it ever reached your shop. Fuel has already passed through many hands before it reaches yours in basket or sack. By evening, you think of what is left, not only what has been used. The tongs are returned to their peg or laid in their usual place. Hammerheads are checked almost without looking. Chisel, punch, hardy, swage. Tools are not arranged to impress anyone. They are arranged so tomorrow begins without confusion. In a life built on repetition, order is a kind of mercy. The hand reaches where it reached yesterday. The tool is there, you glance over the anvil face. It is warm from long labor. The edges have served for drawing out and bending. The flat has served for straightening and flattening. The hardy hole and pritchel hole have taken their own work through the day. No one outside the trade may notice such things. But to you, the anvil is not just a block of iron. It is the center of a learned routine, the place where heat becomes shape. Water in the slack tub still gives off a little warmth. If a hot piece enters it now, there is the familiar hiss, the brief cloud of steam, the sharp smell that rises with quenched scale and damp ash. The tub has cooled tools, cooled iron, and stood ready against stray spark and small danger all day. Nothing in the shop feels very grand, yet nearly everything is necessary. You sweep or nudge together what can be gathered. Larger scraps go into a place for future use. Bent nails may be straightened or reforged. Fragments of workable iron stay in the shop's memory. A poor material may be discarded. A sound piece is kept. This habit is not miserliness. It is the natural answer to the value of metal. Wrought iron does not arrive without cost. You have no reason to treat it carelessly. There may be a horse waiting no longer, no customer at the threshold now, no one calling over the day's noise because the noise itself is ending. The lane outside has thinned into evening life. Doors close. Speech lowers. Somewhere nearby, a pot is being stirred. Somewhere a child is being called indoors. Somewhere a bell marks another passing point in the day. The whole settlement is turning inward by degrees. Inside your own household, the workshop and home are not entirely separate worlds. That is one of the plain truths of many craft lives. The family knows the smells of iron and smoke because those smells cross the boundary with you. They know the timing of your day because the day's labor shapes the household's meals, interruptions, and waiting. In many such homes, family members also help more than records clearly show. Fuel moved, food carried, small sales handled, accounts remembered, tools watched over. Labor does not always announce itself in writing simply because it happens in familiar rooms. So the closing of the forge is also a return to the people nearest it. Before that return is complete, there are still practical things to see to. The unfinished work is laid where tomorrow's eye will find it. Pieces promised to customers are kept where they will not be confused with scrap. A note, a mark, or a spoken reminder may hold the order of the next day. Shoe first, hinge second, plough fitting after, if the iron stock proves enough. You look once more at the fuel. Enough for another morning, perhaps. Better if more arrives soon. In this year, the thought lingers. 1348 hangs over ordinary work, even when no one says its name aloud in every sentence. A carrier delayed, a labourer absent, a household shut, a market less busy than it should be. The exact shape of that disruption changes from place to place, and much of any one blacksmith's daily feeling must be reconstructed with care. Still, uncertainty can sit in a workshop as plainly as any tool. It does not always stop the work. Often, it simply accompanies it. At last, the fire is banked or reduced so that it can sleep instead of rage. The room changes immediately. Without the active forge, the smithy feels larger and dimmer. Its corners return. The glow no longer commands every surface. You can hear smaller sounds again. A stool moved over the floor, the light tap of iron set down, the faint drip or settling sound from the slack tub, the tired shift of your own feet. Your hands feel the day in simple ways. A deep ache across the palm, a stiffness in the fingers that spent hours around hammer haft and tong reins. Heat dried the skin. Dust settled into the lines. The forearms are heavy. The shoulders have their own quiet complaint. It is a practiced pain, not a new one, not a noble one, just the common price of shaping metal for long hours. The apron may come off. Soot remains. The smell remains. It clings to wool, to skin, to the inside of the nose. Even after supper, even after rest, some of it will remain. Medieval work does not leave the body easily. It goes home with you. And yet, there is a kind of calm in this closing. Tools put back, fire tamed, iron sorted, debts remembered as well as they can be. Tomorrow prepared in rough outline. Nothing has been finished forever. It never is. A smith's work is made to wear, loosen, crack, and return. But for one evening, enough has been brought into order. You step away from the anvil. The forge still breathes a little under its banked fuel, but the day's loud labour is over. The room, so full of ringing, now keeps mostly to itself. In that softer silence, with the bench set right and the charcoal dimming gently, the blacksmith's day does what most medieval days do in the end. It narrows from labour to household, from heat to supper, from noise to low voices, from the public needs of other people to the small private task of resting before it all begins again. From the forge, the evening turns inward. The change is not sudden. Heat still hangs in your clothes. Soot still sits in the lines of your hands. Even after you leave the anvil, your body keeps the rhythm of it for a little while. Shoulder, elbow, wrist. Lift and fall. Lift and fall. The work goes on in the muscles after it has stopped in the room. You step into the household side of the dwelling or into the space just beyond the workshop where supper is already becoming itself. Medieval craft life does not keep a clean line between trade and home. The smithy and the household stand very close to one another, and sometimes they are barely separate at all. Smoke drifts where food is set out. Tools rest against walls not far from stools and bedding. The day does not divide neatly into public labour and private peace. It just grows quieter. Supper is plain. It is meant to fill you, not surprise you. Bread first, harder at the crust. Softer in the middle if it is fresh enough. Pottage, if there is pottage, thick with what the household can spare. Perhaps onion, perhaps cabbage, perhaps peas that have cooked down into the broth until they are more texture than shape. A little cheese. Ale weaker than the kind made for feast days, but safer and more familiar than water left standing too long. Meat may appear sometimes, but not because evening asks for luxury. More often, this meal is made from ordinary things, the same ordinary things that carry one day into the next. You sit, and the first stillness of the day has its own weight. Standing at the forge is tiring. So is sitting after it. Your legs begin to notice themselves. Your lower back loosens by degrees. Hands that grip tongs all day now close around a bowl or chunk of bread, and even that seems to ask something of the fingers. The palms are rough with old work. The skin along the thumb is thick. Small burns do not deserve notice anymore. They are old companions. They arrive and leave without ceremony. If there are others in the household, their work has had its own shape and its own fatigue. A craft home is held together by more than the person striking iron. Fuel must be fetched or measured. Food must be prepared. Small sales may be handled. Accounts may be remembered even when no ink is used. Someone notices how much charcoal remains. Someone notices which customer promised to pay later. Someone notices whether tomorrow's bread is enough, whether the stool leg has loosened, whether a child needs a shoe nail tapped back into place. Records often speak more clearly about the smith than about everyone who helps the smith remain a smith. But the household knows better. Talk at supper is likely close to the ground, not ideas, not great affairs. The cart from one farm has still not come back for its repaired fitting. A neighbour's hinge now swings properly. The charcoal basket is lower than hoped. The road has been muddy again. Someone heard that 2 more houses in another lane are shut or quiet. In 1348, that kind of report can fall heavily even when spoken softly. News of sickness does not have to enter the room loudly to change the feel of it. It arrives in pauses, in names not followed by more detail, in the way people decide not to travel tomorrow if they can help it, in the way custom continues because custom is one of the few steady things left. You eat slowly because there is no reason not to. The bright work is done. No customer should be pounding at the door now for a hook or staple that cannot wait until dawn. Evening belongs to lower voices. The body, emptied by labor, receives food with a kind of plain gratitude. Bread tastes like bread. Ale tastes like ale. Hunger does not ask for much poetry. And yet supper is not only about refilling the body. It is also when the day's labor is judged, not in speeches, but in the quiet arithmetic of survival. Was enough finished to make the charcoal worth burning? Can iron stock be stretched a little longer from the scraps you saved? Will one customer pay in coin, another in grain, and another only after harvest, if harvest is kind? Medieval smiths lived in a world where payment could take several forms, and not all of them arrived promptly. A town customer might pay sooner. A rural one might ask for time. Credit, promise, memory, and reputation could matter almost as much as coin in the hand. The exact balance changed from place to place, but almost nowhere did useful work guarantee easy payment. So at supper, while the bowl grows lighter, the household may count in the old, quiet ways. Not always by writing, sometimes by remembering who owes what. One set of hinges for a cooper, mending on a hoe, a strap buckle, a pair of nails added in passing and not yet settled, a horseshoe fitted in haste because the animal could not wait. All these little pieces make a living if enough of them come, and if enough of them are paid for before your own stores run low. There is comfort here, but it is a medieval comfort. Narrow, earned. A bench by the wall, steam leaving the pot. Firelight, gentler than forge light. The smell of cooked onions mixing with old smoke and iron dust, carried in on your clothes. A bowl warming your hands in a different way than iron warmed them. The day's loud music is gone, and in its place is the very soft work of chewing, swallowing, listening, breathing. Outside, the lane darkens. Inside, the workshop settles by inches. The banked forge no longer asks for your full attention. The tools remain where you put them. Tomorrow, they will be taken up again. Tonight, they can rest in their pegs and corners like animals folded down for sleep. You finish the meal. Crumbs remain. A little ale remains. Tiredness remains most of all. But fed now and seated among familiar things, you feel the edge come off the day. Not because life has become easy. It has not. Only because for this 1 hour no iron needs striking. No sparks need dodging. No customer is waiting to judge the line of a hinge or the fit of a shoe. There is only the plain mercy of supper, and after supper, the slower drift toward night. Night does not arrive as a clean curtain. It gathers in corners first. It thickens under the bench, along the wall, in the spaces between hanging tools. The last useful tasks are small ones. A door checked. A vessel moved closer in. A coal looked at one final time. Someone makes sure a spark has not found straw where it should not be. In a timber world, fire is servant only when watched. After a day spent commanding heat, you end by distrusting what remains of it. The bedding waits where bedding can be made to fit. In many medieval homes, sleep is simple and shared with the realities of space, season, and income. There may be a proper bed frame if the household is doing reasonably well, or a simpler arrangement of mattress, coverlet, blanket, straw, wool, or whatever materials stand between flesh and boards. Privacy is not arranged in the modern way. Warmth matters more. Proximity matters more. The house keeps workshop smells because it cannot help it. Smoke in the timbers, charcoal dust in the floor cracks, iron, damp ash, leather, old wool, breath. You lower yourself down with the caution of someone who has been on his feet since first light. The body does not simply lie down. It reports back. Ankles, knees, the lower spine. A shoulder that took too many awkward lifts. Fingers that keep wanting to close as if around tongs. This is one of the plain truths of the trade. Smithing depends on skill and rhythm, not brute force alone, but skill and rhythm still travel through flesh. And flesh keeps count. There may be a little prayer before sleep, something known by heart, something short. In a world ordered by church bells, feast days, fasts, and familiar forms of devotion, the ending of the day often carries a religious shape, even when no grand feeling accompanies it. Faith here can be as habitual as banking the coals, a practiced turning of the mind, a spoken protection for the night, a remembrance of the dead if there are dead close enough to remember freshly, which in 1348 they may well be. The plague sits at the edge of many thoughts now, even when no one names it. Not every village feels it in the same hour. Not every lane loses the same number. But rumour and absence travel ahead of certainty. A customer missed, a carter delayed, a house shut. Work goes on because work must. Supper is eaten because hunger returns whether the year is kind or terrible. Sleep comes because tiredness is stronger than dread on many ordinary nights. Even fear, in the end, must make room for exhaustion. The sounds of sleep are not silence. They are another kind of workshop. Wood settling, a cough, fabric shifting, a dog outside or a horse stamping somewhere beyond the lane, wind worrying at a gap in the boards. Far off, perhaps, a bell if the place is large enough, and the hour needs marking. Closer still, the faintest life remaining in the forge where the banked fuel gives one last soft breath, and then another. Not enough to wake the room, just enough to remind you that morning can be started from what survives the night. In colder weather, you feel where the house fails to keep the dark out. A draught reaches the face. Feet search for warmer cloth. Hands tuck in close. In warmer months, the air may sit heavier, carrying the stale softness of ash, and days end sweat. The season changes the comfort, but not the need. Sleep is repair of the only kind available to most working bodies. There is no leisure cure for sore joints, no holiday waiting at the end of the week in the modern sense. There is this night, then another day. Your thoughts move slowly now, dull with fatigue. They do not rise to great plans. They stay with practical things because practical things own the shape of tomorrow. There is iron stock to check, a tool handle that may need wedging tighter soon, charcoal that cannot last forever. Work promised to one customer before market day, to another before field work resumes, to another whenever he can finally bring payment. A smith's mind, like a smith's bench, rarely empties completely. Still, sleep begins to take these thoughts apart. One by one, they lose their edges. The unfinished nail no longer matters. The cracked hinge can wait until morning. The anxious reckoning over coin, grain, and favors owed softens into the dark. Even the body, stubborn as it is, begins to forgive the day. Heat leaves the forearms. The jaw unclenches. The ringing in the ears from hammer on anvil seems, at last, to stand farther away. This is how an ordinary medieval day ends for someone history needs, but rarely records in full. Not with triumph, not with disaster, not with lesson or reward. Just with tiredness that has been honestly earned. Just with bread in the stomach, soot in the skin, and tomorrow already faintly waiting inside the banked coals. You drift there between the smell of ash and the weight of blankets while the house holds around you. The forge sleeps in its own way. The tools sleep in theirs. The lane outside goes still. Somewhere beyond this room, the wide world keeps moving with its sickness, its rents, its bells, its fields, its roads, its distant authorities, and near troubles. But here, for a few hours, none of that asks for hammer or tongs. Your breathing lengthens. The dark grows plain. The body that spent the day carrying heat now gives itself over to cool linen, rough wool, straw, and rest. And by the time the first weak grey returns to the cracks around the shutter, you will have had what the trade allows. Not enough to erase the strain, only enough to begin again. So night closes gently over the smith's house, over the blackened rafters, over the saved scraps on the bench, over the anvil standing patient on its block, over the bellows at rest, over your aching hands at last, grown still. And under that quiet without spectacle, another medieval day comes to its natural end. And still, the trade does not really end. It only grows quiet enough for the next beginning. Somewhere beyond the shutter, a cock tries the morning before it has properly arrived. The sound comes thin through the dark. Then there is the small shifting of the house itself. Timber settling, straw rustling. A faint draught finding the edge of the bed and touching the skin that spent yesterday so close to the fire. You wake before the light has committed itself. For a moment, you do not move. The body notices its own weight first. Shoulders heavy, forearms stiff, a mild ache laid across the back of the hands. The sort of soreness that no longer feels strange, only familiar. Only earned, and not in any noble way. Earned because iron is stubborn, because fuel must be lifted, because a hammer comes down thousands of times in the course of an ordinary life. The room is cool now, cool enough that the memory of the forge feels almost doubtful, yet the smell of yesterday remains. Smoke in the rafters, iron dust on cloth, damp ash, old charcoal, a trace of ale, a trace of wool. The household and the workshop are never fully separate. Even in sleep, the trade stays near. Beside you, others may still be breathing evenly, or turning once before waking. In many craft homes, work belongs to more than the hands that strike the iron. Someone keeps food moving, cloth mended, small accounts remembered, scraps saved, customers answered at the door. The records do not always speak clearly about every pair of hands, but the house itself does. It would not hold together otherwise. You sit up slowly. The floor is cold. The first task is not labor exactly, only preparation for labor. Clothing first. Linen that is not fresh, but serviceable. Wool over it, plain and practical. Shoes stiff from yesterday's wear. Nothing here is dramatic. Nothing here is chosen for beauty. It is all chosen because sparks do not ask permission, because ash settles where it likes, because a blacksmith's day stains what it touches. When you stand, the body protests once, then accepts the terms. There is no clock to consult. There is no bright face with neat hands to tell you the hour. Time arrives by habit, by darkness thinning at the shutter, by the remembered order of bells, by the knowledge that if the forge is not breathing soon, the whole day will start behind itself. You cross the room quietly. A heel avoids the loose board by memory. A hand finds the latch. The air beyond the door is colder still. It carries wet earth, old smoke from neighbouring hearths, and the faint animal smell of the lane before people fully claim it. The sky is not black now. It has become that dim grey that belongs to neither night nor morning. The workshop waits as you left it. That is one of its comforts. The anvil stands in place on its block. The bellows rest folded in on themselves like sleeping lungs. Tongs hang dark against the wall pegs. Chisels, punches, a file, a shallow tray where nails or rivets may lie. The slack tub holds yesterday's water, still enough to reflect almost nothing. The floor keeps its scatter of scale, ash, and tiny black fragments of charcoal. Nothing has improved in the night. Nothing has worsened much either. The room is simply ready to be made useful again. You bend over the hearth and look for what the evening left behind. If the fire was banked well, some life may still be hidden under grey cover. That small thrift matters. Charcoal is not to be wasted. It must be made, carried, bought, or bargained for, and every bit of fuel that can be coaxed back into heat is easier on the household than fresh expense. So you stir gently first, not with hope exactly, with practice. A dull red answers from under ash. That is enough. A little more charcoal goes on, then a little more. You do not heap it high at once. Fire, like most things in this life, behaves better when not hurried. The bellows handle feels cool under the hand. Leather creaks, air moves. The buried red brightens, then threads itself through black fuel. A soft orange opens, then another. Soon the workshop has its first sound of the day. Not hammering, not yet. Only the breathing pull and push of the bellows. A slow animal sound, the forge waking one lungful at a time. As the heat gathers, you look over what waits. A short length of bar iron, a saved-off cut that may become nails. A hinge left yesterday half finished near the shoulder. A bent staple to rework. Small tasks, perhaps. But small tasks are what fill a trade. Grand objects belong to stories told elsewhere. A village or townsmith lives by things that hold doors shut, keep carts moving, fasten boards together, spare a farmer the cost of replacing what can still be repaired. The iron itself is likely not born here. In most cases, it comes already smelted and worked into stock somewhere else, and reaches your hands as bars or usable pieces. Your labor is the second life of the metal, heating it, drawing it out, bending, punching, cutting, joining. mending what another season has worn thin. Outside, another sound begins. A cart far off, perhaps, or someone carrying pails. Then a dog, then silence again. Even in a town, morning does not rush in all at once. It gathers by pieces. You set a scrap near the edge of the growing heat and wait for colour. This waiting is part of the work too. The hand cannot force iron cold. The eye must judge when black becomes red, when red nears orange, when the piece is ready enough to move and not so hot that it spoils under careless blows. Medieval craftsmen learn these things through repetition, not by neat written instruction. An apprentice sees, carries, pumps, watches, and slowly begins to understand that heat has degrees, and each degree asks for a different touch. The first piece comes ready. You take it with tongs. Set it on the anvil. One strike, then another. Light blows at first only to remind the hands what they do. The sound is smaller than it will be later. A polite ring in the half-dark. The sort of sound that belongs to work beginning before the street is fully awake. Scale flakes away under the hammer. Tiny dark skins of iron jump and settle. The smell changes with the heat. Less of damp ash now. More of hot metal and charcoal. Steam rises when the tongs brush the rim of the slack tub. The room warms at the front first, leaving your back still cool. That is the forge's way. One side of the body belongs to winter, the other already to summer. A few more strokes, turn the piece, draw it thinner, cut nearly through. Bend, twist, return it to the fire. None of this asks for admiration. That is almost the comfort of it. A hook is only a hook, a nail only a nail. Yet villages lean on such plain things all the same. By now the shutter edges are turning pale. The day outside has started to admit itself. Soon bells may sound. Soon feet will pass more often in the lane. Soon someone may arrive with a plough fitting, a broken latch, a hoop wanting mending, or a promise to pay later. In 1348, some mornings may also carry absence more sharply than noise. Fewer familiar faces. Delayed deliveries. Rumour passing quietly from doorway to doorway. The plague's first great wave does not make every street dramatic at every moment, but it can leave a strangeness in ordinary trade all the same. A customer expected does not come. A charcoal cart is late. A neighbour's shutter remains closed longer than usual. Exact details differ from place to place, and no single diary gives this whole day. Still, uncertainty itself belongs honestly to the year. You do not stand in the doorway and meditate on history. You feed the fire. That, in the end, is what most people do inside troubled years. They notice what has changed. They worry a little. They go on with what the morning requires. So the forge draws breath again. The anvil receives the first true ringing of another day. Your hands, still marked by yesterday, begin their old conversation with iron, and the weak grey outside the shutter slowly becomes morning enough to work by. The weak grey outside the shutter slowly becomes morning enough to work by. And that is how it happens again. Not with a grand beginning, not with a trumpet, not even with a proper feeling of rest, only with enough light to see the lip of the hearth, the rim of the slack tub, the pale dusting of ash that settled while the house still slept. The forge takes the air you give it. Bellows breathe, coals answer. A low redness opens under the charcoal like an eye half awake. Your hands know the order before your thoughts do. Tongs first, then the poker, then the shallow sweep that draws yesterday's clinker aside. A little crust breaks, a little ash falls. The floor receives it without complaint, as it has received every other dark flake of every other morning. Nothing about the trade wants poetry from you. It wants steadiness. It wants heat kept where heat is needed. It wants iron moved while it is willing to move, and left alone when it is not. So you begin there. A bar of wrought iron waits where it was set aside. Not elegant, not rare, just useful stock smelted and worked somewhere else, brought here to become whatever the village still needs. Most of what passes through your hands is like that. Iron already won from ore by other labor. Your work is the second life of the metal. The shaping, the correcting, the mending, the 1,000 plain things that keep wheels turning and doors hanging and tools worth lifting. You test the fire with the end of the bar. Not yet. Then again, after another patient working of the bellows. Better. The sound begins softly at first. A low stirring from the hearth. Leather folds pushing air. Charcoal shifting. Then, when the metal comes to heat and meets the anvil, the morning takes its old shape. Ring. Pause. Ring. Turn. Ring. Not fast. Never as fast as later people like to imagine. Good work wastes less motion than bad work. You raise the hammer only as much as needed. You strike where the iron asks to be struck. Near the horn for one curve. Flat on the face for another. A few blows to draw it out, a few to thicken where it has gone too thin. Rhythm saves strength. Rhythm saves time. Rhythm, more than force, carries the day. The first jobs are small because small jobs suit an awakening fire. Staples, hooks, nail blanks, a rivet or two. Things that can be reheated without offense. Things that do not mind if the heat is a little shy while morning is still arranging itself. Scale breaks away in dry black petals. It lands on your sleeves. It gathers on the anvil block. It slips into the cracks of the floorboards nearest the work. By evening there will be more of it. There is always more of it. From deeper in the house comes the smallest household sound. Wood shifted, cloth moved. Someone turning toward the day but not yet fully in it. Workshop and home sit too close to be separate worlds. They share walls. They share smoke. They share bread. They share the same narrow stock of patience. That closeness is part of the trade as surely as iron is. A craft household is never only one pair of hands, even when records write down one man's name and stop there. Fuel appears because someone carried it. A meal appears because someone made it. A customer is told when to return because someone remembered. Coins, if they come, must be kept. Debts, if they linger, must also be kept, though in a different way. The hook in your tongs sits a little loose this morning. You feel it at once. Even your tools age under this work. The hammer handle smooths where the palm has worn it. The file loses its bite. Tongs spread at the jaws from holding heat too often. Nothing in the forge remains untouched by use. Everything asks for care and then for more care. You set the loose tongs aside for later tightening and reach for another pair. Outside, the lane is not yet busy. A cart may pass later. Hooves may stop at the door. A neighbor may come with a hinge in one hand and apology in the other, asking whether it can be mended rather than made new. Most days, mending is the truer business. New iron costs more than many wish to spend. Old iron, if it can be scarfed, upset, punched again, or forge welded into service, deserves another turn in the fire. That, too, is part of the rhythm of 1348. Even before sickness unsettles roads and households, thrift governs almost everything. Iron is too useful to throw aside lightly. A broken strap can become a smaller strap. An offcut can become nails. A damaged nail can still yield a point for something humbler. Scraps live in corners and shallow bins because one day they will be just enough. You know where each useful piece lies. The long strip bent at one end, the triangular offcut from a cart fitting, the stub too short for a hinge but perfect for two small hooks. To another eye, it may look like a litter of failures. To yours, it is a store of futures, only very modest ones. The forge brightens. Morning gains confidence. Smoke pulls better now. The air in the shop warms, though the edges of the room stay cool. Timber posts remain rough beneath the soot. Pegs in the wall hold chisels, punches, swages. The slack tub catches a little light at its rim. When hot metal meets the water, there is the usual hiss, the brief cloud of steam, the smell of wet scale and warm iron. Then stillness again. A church bell carries thinly through the morning. Not a command exactly, more like a reminder that the day is shared. Other people are waking into their own repetitions. Bread ovens are being opened, animals fed, market boards lifted, doors unbarred. Somewhere a clerk counts. Somewhere a priest prepares words heard many times before. Somewhere a field hand wonders about weather. Somewhere a household wonders who has not come out this morning, and why. That thought passes through the village now more often than anyone likes. In a year like this, absence has a sharper outline. A delayed delivery of charcoal. A customer who promised to return and does not. A shutter left closed too long, but work does not leave room for dwelling on every absence. Worry can sit in the chest and still make way for labor. In truth, that is how most worry survives. It moves in beside the ordinary. So you heat another bar. This one wants to become a set of nails for a customer who will almost certainly complain at the price, though the price barely keeps pace with fuel and time. Nails look small in the hand. They do not look small in labor when made one by one. Heat, hammer, point, head, cut, repeat. The body learns the measure until thought can drift elsewhere. That is one of the quieter truths of skilled work. Repetition does not always deaden the mind. Sometimes it frees it into a shallow, steady current. You stand, you strike, you turn the piece. You strike again. And because the morning is still young, because no crowd presses the threshold yet, the work has a plain and almost peaceful honesty to it. Fire, iron, hand, eye. Error corrected at once. Success too small to boast of. One sound answering another. If an apprentice is present in such a shop, this is the hour when learning begins again in the old hard way. Not from speeches, not from secrets spoken over the coals, from watching color, from seeing when red is too dull and yellow too fierce, from working the bellows without letting the heat die, from carrying stock where told, from discovering that useful knowledge often arrives disguised as chores. Many boys enter a craft this way, not by mastering it at once, but by standing near enough for years that the motions settle into them. Whether this morning holds a helper or only your own two hands, the lesson remains the same. The forge rewards attention. It punishes haste. It forgives neither laziness nor daydreaming when iron is at the right heat. But outside those moments of decision, much of the trade is waiting. Waiting for color. Waiting for the next piece, waiting for a customer, waiting for news from a road, waiting perhaps for a season to turn easier than this one. By now the room smells fully of work. Charcoal, warm metal, damp from the tub, old smoke in the rafters, wool and leather faintly heated by the nearness of the fire. Your shoulders have found their ache again, not the sharp ache of injury, the familiar one. The one that means the body has resumed its place in the day. The small pile of finished pieces grows by the anvil, not impressive, not meant to be. Just enough proof that morning is being turned, bit by bit, into useful things. And outside the shutter, the weak grey